Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith along with Mark Hamlin, episode 172. Great to have Mark here. He's here with his son Malta. Flew in from Germany. Are your arms tired?
Yeah. I really came to see my sister, but I ended up seeing you.
All right. So Mark Hamlin. I have known the man. It'll be 60 years in August. Now, we had the other Mark on, Mark Costello. Mark Hamlin. We had a podcast with Costello. We did, yeah. You'll have to listen to it. We thought it should hit the editing floor, but Yvonne said put it up.
Is it listenable?
Yeah. There was no profanity. No profanity. With let's go with Mark. He was wearing this Mets hat today, and tell us who played. I remember I wasn't really into baseball, but I played baseball. And 1969, I can remember being in school, and we were allowed to all come in and watch a little black and white TV.
Yeah, in the auditorium there. Yeah, or not the auditorium, the gymnasium. Yeah.
So tell us who's in the lineup with the Mets.
Well, the catcher, I remember that. Incidentally, Brooks. They played the Orioles. Yeah, they were household. They were the favorites, and Brooks Robinson was the star. He just died, but the Mets had Jerry Grody catching. They had Al Weiss was second base. First base was Don Clendenin, and out in right field, Ron Swoboda. They used to switch, and Cleon Jones was in left, and Tommy Agee was in center. And who's on first? No, Tom Seaver, I remember, was the pitcher. Nolan Ryan, Tug McGraw, the reliever, great pitcher, and I think Bob Veal was a pitcher there too as well. I may be wrong there, but no, it was a great team, and you never know who's going to win in sports. You never know who's going to win when you walk in the arena, And so if you know who's going to win, you don't even need to play. So it was an amazing season. The year before, I remember they went 62 and 100, and the next year they went 162. Wow. So it was a big turnaround. The amazing Mets, that was
big number. So when we get to 200 episodes on the podcast, is this going to be on the test? The Mets lineup, you think it's important?
Yeah, I can't remember the third baseman was.
So man, we'll come back to you.
A senior moment.
Actually, that reminds me. I ended up, Robbie Seguzo and Carling Bassett. I was the tennis director. They own the place. Seguzo Bassett is now Everett's. And I signed them up for his function in Fort Lauderdale, speaking at the War Memorial to promote tennis. Well, first Robbie didn't want to go. They said, Carleen, you got to go. She didn't want to go, so I had to go. And I ended up, had to present tennis every other hour, but we were there the whole day. And the person sitting next to me had to present hockey. Was the great Jean Beliveau. Oh. And I sat down, Mr. Beliveau, number 1, I think it was Rogie Vachon. Number 2, Jacques Perrier. Number 3, J.C. Tremblay. Number 4 was Jean Beliveau. 5, they retired Boom Boom Geoffrion. 6, Ralph Backstrom. 7, Howie Merns. This will be on the test. But no, we're going to get around. Mark has a big-time background in tennis. He's been in tennis 45 years. I know I've been in tennis 50 years. As the tennis boom was going along, and Hamlin, I go, hey, you got great sense of humor, great people skills, you're a great athlete. You need to jump on this wagon and get connected. Like so many people were products of the tennis boom. Tennis just exploded. I saw Pam Clore, mother of Matt and Chris Clore. I have 4 kids, but I don't really know the daughters. But
Matt Clore was over at my place in Berlin.
Yeah,
he gave my son Malta a few lessons. He was recruiting for North Carolina State NC.
Yeah. With but Ernie, like you and I, played all the sports growing up, and he so many people fell in love with tennis in the 70s.
Yeah.
We're up here at Wintergreen, Virginia. Mark, if you look straight ahead, give me the profile. One thing they've already told me is that my nose is going to be one of the slopes up here. And I think if you hang around a bit more, they'll have another mountain up here.
Well, I remember talking about profile jokes. I was at the French Open, and Ilian Stasi was playing Guy Forget. And I got into this court 1 with Danny Cooper, so he had a ticket. So he runs up to the top and throws the ticket over the wall to me. Back then they didn't have many controls. The French Open has changed so much. We're going again this year. And so I run up there, and so Nastasi goes to the net, and He goes to the net and he misses his volley. And he turns around to all the photographers. He goes, "No shots from the side. No shots from the side. Only from the front. No." He had this little beer belly. And anyway, the match got called. It was 6-all in the fifth. They didn't have lights back then, and then they had to continue the next day. And Guy Forget won easily.
We could tell nostalgia jokes.
No problem.
Nostalgia stories. But Danny Cooper is a lawyer in Montreal. He's somebody who was around us, I say, 15 years. We're learning how to play. We're learning how to teach. We could make this a Danny Cooper roast.
I'm in. Okay.
I could just say, listeners, I could just say one thing and Hamlin's going to laugh. Depression, day 2. Or that's okay, Coop. It's all right, Hoopchu. You got a piece of it. That's my little background. Baseball background. He's returning serve and he frames it.
That's okay. You got a piece of it. Keep going.
With Hamlin, let's go. We keep this clean, but why don't we go with a Mark Hamlin joke? I mean, I know what Hamlin's going to say. It's going to be 60 years. I moved from Potsdam, New York. I think it was August 10th, 1964. Everybody's going, who cares? To Casanova, New York. And I was going to hockey practice. My mother stopped and picked Mark up, and I was in the back seat wearing my helmet. I heard that story. But Mark tells people we grew up, we went to different schools together, and we took up space.
He took up space, yes.
That's how it goes. Give us your bartending joke.
The difference?
Yeah, the doctor.
The only difference between a bartender and a doctor.
Oh, that's got profanity in it.
Yeah,
What about the dog and
what?
the car accident?
Oh, well, that's a little, the kid goes to school and Johnny goes to school and he's late. And the teacher says, "Why are you late, Johnny?" And he says, "Well, my dog got hit in the ass, And the teacher said, "Johnny, it's not it. It's rectum." He says, "Rectum? Damn near killed him." But anyways, that's why I came to America to get some new material here.
With how's it go with you and someone's singing, "Hey, why don't you sing solo?" Solo, no one can hear you, or 10 or 12 miles down the road.
Sing by the door, we'll help you out.
With I'll go through this quickly. I know we're going to have to come back and do part of this podcast, I think, via telephone, but we'll get around it. We're going to get around to tennis. We're supposed to be trying to give out golden nuggets, tennis instruction. So Mark's following the path that I was under. I was told, "Hey, you got to learn how to play." And I remember actually in Casanova, New York, I was spending the summers in Florida. Came up to Casanova, New York, and saw you in a pub. And Hamlin said, "What are you doing, Smith?" I said, "Playing some tennis. I'll beat you."
No,
let's play tomorrow.
The whole story is I coached the Pee Wee hockey team.
Oh, I got a great story for that.
And they asked me if I'd coach the Pee Wee hockey team. And at the end of the season, I did it. And they gave me a gift certificate of $40. And I didn't know what to do with the $40. Okay, and so I walked into DeWitt Sports, and I said, "I'll buy a tennis racket." And then I ran into you. I said, "Hey, I'm playing tennis too." But anyways, back then tennis was in Casanova. You played it maybe with your girlfriend, But I didn't have a girlfriend, so I couldn't play.
I remember when we went to the movie Bad News Bears, the first one. Tatum O'Neal,
right?
Who Mary John McEnroe was Walter Matthau. Listeners, young people, look up Walter Matthau. What a funny guy. And we were walking out. And father stopped you, and the question was, "Hey, coach, there's his son Johnny waved to you," and he said, "What should my son do get ready for next season?" And it was really common, but he was new to hockey. Your answer was, commonplace. You said, "Well, this next year, make him buy his own skates."
Yeah, he was, or something about what kind of skates should I get him? And I said, "Well, don't worry about it. Have him buy his own skates, earn his own money and buy his own skates." But it was just like that back then, If I wanted to go to the movies, I used to go out and pick berries, We had those backfields and blueberries and wild blueberries, raspberries, and I'd just, put them in jars and go to houses, and I'd ring 3 doorbells, and I had my 75 cents, and I could go to the movies.
That's a great story. It's our parents would have been saying the same thing to us. Oh, kids today, but there was plastic. That was a new thing. We used to go searching for Coke bottles, take them in for
that's what we did.
pennies and,
Right.
and get penny candy.
Right. Well, ice cream.
Ice cream.
The popsicle was 5 cents. The ice cream stand was 10. We got done with baseball, Little League baseball. And we'd look in the bushes till we got enough bottles. But it's just not like that anymore.
No, I can remember. Well, we grew up in this little town. Talking about being independent, you could walk anywhere. People didn't have keys to their houses, and never look for the keys to their car because the keys were parked in the car. And I remember my mother. She was always giving kids Tootsie Rolls, so she would go into the local drugstore and she'd always charge a few Tootsie Rolls. So I'd be walking from the lake back to where you lived and through the village, and I started going into the drugstore and just put candy on the counter and say, my mother had these 2 magic words, charge it. so I remember the old man said, Stephen, you going in the drugstore and charging candy? Yeah, it works like a charm. We go, don't do that anymore. But no, I was helping you out with your tennis. I mean, I tell people I've taught to teach tennis is that you should work as a volunteer. And I remember you and Chris Gilmer, you were my guinea pigs at one point in the summertime. And he was not a hockey player with us, but he was an athlete, played basketball. And my mother used to call him Mr. Confidence. No problem.
They used to call him Gizmo.
Gizmo. Here's a story I told about Chris Gilmore's son this past weekend, because I was at Raleigh in North Carolina State. Patrick Gibson, he just won a tournament yesterday. He's had some injuries. He's climbing up the ladder now. He just won a challenger. And we saw him a couple weeks ago, and he was 100% at the net, winning 8 times, which was 7% of the points, won 8 of them. But 2 weeks later, he wins a challenger, which is a really good effort. Now he's straight into the Australian Open, wins a wild card, because they have a reciprocal arrangement between the U.S. and Australia. So Chris Gilmore, he obviously fell in love with tennis, just like we all did. And he didn't work as a tennis coach, but
he was certainly interested.
Yeah, no, he got to know Craig Tiley. His kids they were living in Wisconsin, and kids went to Craig Tiley's camp in Illinois. And he got on the phone with Dustin Taylor, who's now at Oklahoma State, but he was a USTA national coach. So long story short story long. So his son became, one summer, I mean, maybe he was 19, 20 years old. His oldest son, Connor, was an intern for Dustin Taylor. He helped out with, I think it was the college team. The USTA picked out college all-stars and took them to the tournaments. And he helped out, I think it was as a manager for that project, charting matches or whatever. So Matt Clore was not with the USTA at that time. He was a college coach at NC State, but he worked with Patrick Gibson, and then I was there as well. And Patrick Gibson, you get online. I mean, we could find Patrick Gibson right-handed, left-handed, just showing fundamentals. And so Matt Clore told, he's not talking to Patrick on a regular basis, and he said, "Hey, there's a kid down there by the name of Connor Gilmore. He'll know how to shadow swing." And Patrick's much younger. He goes, "Just find that guy and just ask him in the evening to stand behind him and just shadow swing." That's a story on shadow swinging. But so I was so fortunate to go work at Vic Braden's. And I could say so many things about that, but Mary Lay called me up. Mary Lay was the head coach. She called me into the office and said, "We need at least one more coach." She said, "Do you have any friends that are going about it the same way you are?" And I said, "Yeah, I could think of this guy, Mark Hamlin." And you were doing that, I remember you had gone and you're being, I was a tennis bum in Boca, go learn how to play tennis, put the hours in, and your athletic ability, your level of play improved very quickly. And then I had worked for All American Sports, you worked for All American Sports. So I call up Hamlin, I go, "Hey, Hamlin, you want to work for Vic Braden?" And you thought I was
3
kidding.
days.
You thought you had a week, did you?
No, you gave me 3 days.
He did. I did. I always in charge.
You did. Yeah. Maybe it was
3
4.
days, make your mind up.
Maybe it was 4.
It wasn't 3 days to get to California.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
No, the next morning I said, Danny?
Hoopy.
I'm out of here. I'm going to go to Vic Braden. He said, well, that's great. And so I kind of left him there, but we were
You're still friends.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, the next morning I was on a bus to my parents and I borrowed, I had a little money to go with, but I borrowed $1,400, which I paid him back. I bought a car, licensed the car, registered the car, insured the car in one day, and the next day I was on my way. I spent the first night in Tyler. The second night I spent with, I think, Jeff Teza in Tucson. And then Country Boy hits LA, 8 lanes right, 8 lanes left. I'm like, we didn't have navigational devices and GPS. Okay. And I found my way up to Coto and I'm looking around. I sit down and this guy slaps me on the back of the head and it was you, and that's the way it all started.
No, it was amazing opportunity for me to work there. But then all of a sudden, next thing you know, is the guy I grew up with that's hanging out, and then I know you did so many things with Vic, but then also Dennis Van der Meer. But I was thinking that what we could do is just continue this, where we could talk about so many things. You and I have worked on so many projects together.
Yeah.
Amazing. All the different, decades.
Well, you were at our facility in Berlin. I mean, you've got a German background, really. I mean, you were at our facility in Berlin at least 4 times.
Oh, but even so, before you went to Berlin, I was in Bad Schwartau with you. But before that, I was with you, Goslar and Zilt and Oncom and Reidenwinkel. It goes back. I have that Helen Smith memory.
Yeah.
Nostalgic with, then, just so many things with Vic, but then with Dennis, but also too, you became a regular visitor to this program we had at Tennis Tech. So
I hired my coaches from there.
Hired the coaches.
I had up in Bad Schwartau, I had the coaches, and Bobby Malone is still there,
Yeah.
And who'd I get? Freddie Foreman. He didn't really work for me, but he's still there.
Jim Rogers.
Rogers was there. There was a bunch of coaches.
There's still
Carla Navarro.
Yeah.
And
that's what we're trying to do with the podcast. And the names you just mentioned.
Pull them back into the circle.
Well, I think many podcasts. I really like to listen to podcasts, talk radio. But I think it's a matter of, it's kind of like a magazine. It's a story about this person, a story about that person. That's great. But I think reinforcing the message. We're trying to carry the torch with tennis teachers from the past.
Yeah.
Vic Braden's work will always be relevant.
Oh yeah. I mean,
because it's physics.
Yeah. He and the thing that I always really impressed me about him was that he would, just take a simple phrase, like there's only one ball and you have it, and there was so much behind that, like execute. Don't worry about shot number 2 until you hit shot number 1. In other words, set up, execute, finish, okay, and then worry about the next shot. And there was a lot of little sayings he had. None of them come to my mind right now, but and there was so much behind it.
Yeah, if you could make a list and we just prepare some thoughts on that. Where again, there's so many golden nuggets that you would have for people. One line from Vic is keep the racket higher longer. I used to write that on the chalkboard when I was training tennis coaches, formerly academic setting. Reasons why keep the racket higher longer. It's in sync with your body, with racket head speed, keeping the racket on the same side of your body, the dimensions of the court, is on and on.
Hit it deep down the middle, he beat everybody in the world.
Yeah, with Billie Jean King, he put the line down 5 feet from the center mark. We still do that. We just call it the center mark. Asked Billie, if you hit every ball here, how would you do? She thought about it for a little bit. She said, you would never lose.
Yeah.
Juniors don't pick up on that. They just watch tennis on TV. I mean, Steve Campbell, it was great for you to connect with him. Steve's the director here at Wintergreen. He worked for Vic. And he was charting juniors. These 2 players are here. One boy's 13 years old. He's a stallion. He's so fast. He's a racehorse and strong, making changes. It's amazing what he's done just in 9 months. He works up with Miran.
The boy out on the court. Yeah.
And
he's going to be a stud.
But with, there were like 2.6 rallies for 10 points. And then he talked to him, and then they doubled it basically. And then 2 days later, they went back, and I repeat what I hear from so many coaches. Chris Clore saw on this past weekend. People are just trying to launch missiles. They're just running around backhands and teeing off on it. And I think that's an idea to have people go out and hit with wooden rackets. And
well, what's the progression? First over the net, and then in the court, and then right and left, and spin and length, and the last priority is hard.
Yeah. So up here we have 3 indoor courts, and we had just a small group, 7 players this morning. 2 on a court. I just get up 6 a.m. and you own the world, and with and then just rallying from the service line, and every time they miss it, the odd person out went to a GreatBase backboard. Rotate. And they finally figured it out. He goes, "Are you saying rotate every time someone misses?" And rotate, and it's just they're just running around the court.
Makes a mistake
Just
more
keep balls in play. We tell juniors rally 8 times, played out. They rally 8 balls. Rally 6 times, played out. Rally 4. You can go 4, 6, 8, and they do it. Then you say ready, play. And people are just trying to tee off on the ball. But then, all the time with Dennis, what a genius, the group dynamics, the progressions. Then, you and I know that you spend a lot of time with master teachers like that. You can take Vic Braden methodology, Vic Braden fact-based components, grip, swing, body, and use Van der Meer progressions.
Oh yeah, it just, you just keep with this method and with the progressions, But I remember Vic saying, people who learn in progressions they like to learn, in pieces and parts. But I don't know. And he was always an advocate. Sorry, my English is not, it's not my native language anymore. But it's, he wanted the whole method. What do you call it? The whole method.
Yeah.
People learn in the whole method, which also has its advantages. But
well, I always tell people when you put together a jigsaw puzzle, usually it's like say in setting in New England in the fall and the colors of all the leaves, and it's a New England bridge, and our listeners probably heard that you got to keep the piece of the puzzle on the table, and you find the edges, you find the corners, but then you put the reds here and the yellows here, and there has to be a plan.
Yeah.
With Mark Costello used to visit
I would change the pieces with a razor blade.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
We had Costello, and saying how nice it was for him to visit my mother when she was widow, and she at one time where she lived alone, and then she had a nurse at one time, and then she had to go to extended care. But our boy Costello is pretty moved for me to go. You got a friend going in with your mother, but you used to write my mother letters, and she would save letters.
Well, after Jim died, I did.
Yeah.
But do you have a name for your listeners? Basers or something like that. Listen, basers. We gotta come up with a name for all your community.
The community, the network. Yeah. Some people call it the cult, like where it's taboo, it's all bad. We're working that way. We actually when Vic passed away, there was no plan. I was very honored that Vic used to say to me, "Steve, we should have a plan." Yeah. I said, "Yeah, Vic, you go forward with a flashlight." Making new discoveries, and I go backwards with a club hitting people over the head.
Yeah,
Did you get that? Did you get that? No. Actually, many people within our community find it very annoying. Are you a great baser?
Yeah.
No, we just teach solid fundamentals. It's sometimes it doesn't go any further than calling it Steve Smith stuff. Then Andy,
fundamentalists.
With Andy Fitzell, it was great to have him for. He's come back and forth and helped out many times, but it was at least 2 solid years where he was helping out. And he'd be the first one I think to tell you that he just tired of being asked the same question on the forehand. Don't you know the modern game? Don't you know you're supposed to turn the doorknob at the contact point? But I think we could talk about Vic, talk about Dennis, then also too. When you said your native language, 40 plus years, in Germany. I was supposed to go. Remember that?
Yeah, well, that was the whole thing is doing you and Kit Woodburn, and Helmut Meyer came to the Vic Braden Tennis College, and he was hiring coaches, and he wanted 3 coaches, So you were all in with a clause in your contract that said if I get the job at Tyler Junior College.
Yeah, if they created it as a different job, there was a lot to that, but they did. Yeah.
And
Eugene Allen.
And then Kim Wittenberg.
Great guy. He's in Italy now. He was on our
I can tell you a story about a trip over. It's pretty funny, But anyways, and then me, and I didn't really want to go. But all my ancestors are from Europe. My grandmother was born in Austria, which later turned after the First World War into the borders changed so much that she ended up in the Ukraine. The Bouillers are French and the Hamlins are English, And so I thought, maybe it would be good if I go to Berlin to Germany for a year. It was a 1-year contract I signed.
I let you down. I didn't go.
You sent me over there. Okay, and I'm trying to tell them. I said, guys, we got the mountains. I said, we got Vic, we got the girls here, we got the beaches. We're in
German beer.
Okay, but anyways, but I went over there with a 1-year contract, and then I stayed a second year to learn the language, and then George Mueller convinced me to go up to Schleswig-Holstein, up to Bad Schwartau, Lübeck, that area. I was just up there the other day. I visited Bobby, and I had a bank account up there. I didn't even know I had. Okay.
I hope it was like Rockefeller.
Well, I was hoping for more. They could have added a few extra zeros at the end, but it was a little chunk of change that I didn't know I had. But anyway, so I was 7 years up there at Bad Schwartau. Then I went to Dusseldorf for 5 years, and ever since then I've been in Berlin.
Well, I was never in Dusseldorf with you, but you certainly.
That's where I met Squire.
But you brought Squire. He came with his young son a couple times when he was 6, 7 years old. And I know you went out to work went to Vic's place with you.
We went out there with a girl, Daria Gaios.
Yeah, I remember you sent her to work with me many times. All the players going back and forth. But coming back to the bank account, when Nelson Rockefeller was running for vice president, they had disclosed financial records, and they discovered that he had a bank account the family didn't know they had at that time. Compound interest. It was making $80,000 a day. Many, many years ago. Your bank account didn't have that kind of money.
Not quite.
Bobby Malone, he's a great guy, Michigander.
Yeah.
He grew up with Luke and Murphy Jensen. So I one time I was writing for this magazine. So, Casanova is not so far from Syracuse. And I went up to see my mother, and I spent 3 days with Luke Jensen. And I said to Luke Jensen, I know a player used to just beat you like the bongos. I just owned you, used you like a bar of soap. He goes, yeah, who's that? I go, Bobby Malone. And he goes, Bobby Malone, I loved his game. He used to hit forehands and run backwards and climb up the fence. Yeah. But Jim Rogers talked about Bobby on the podcast, and it was flattering. He goes, no one could beat Bobby Malone. I think the Murphy Jensen, Luke and Murphy Jensen.
Yeah. Well, they're both in the same town in Michigan.
Yeah.
And that incident, climbing the fence, that actually did happen. They were playing a club championship, and was it Murphy?
Murphy's the younger one.
No, I think Luke. I don't know. Someone hit an overhead, and Bobby was just screaming and just kept running back, and he climbed all the way up the back fence. But that's how the story went.
No, I can remember hearing a story about where Squire did in a club match and got the ball back. David Squire, the Aussie, with. We'll do it. This is an intro. I know we have a time constraint, and plus we have another person that's scheduled, but we'll come back.
Don't push him back.
We'll come back, and but I think we just want you to just think about it, and we'll share some pearls of wisdom from
Yeah.
Uncle Vic, Dennis Van der Meer. Then all your time in Europe. I mean, just tennis in Germany, and it'd be fun. But the great Mark Hamlin, Casanova, New York. He was a goalie. We actually called 2 goalies today. We called Stevie Pelusio. We called Seth Barnum. Didn't get through to Pelusio, but talked to Seth.
Yeah.
Mark's always, he sent so many players to work with me.
I just want to say one thing. Being a goalie doesn't make me a bad person.
but with Mark's sent all these nice German players, juniors, want to come over, learn to play better and possibly go to college. And I used to just train them. I'm such a bad person. When you go back to your tennis facility, so when you walk by Mark, just go, "You were a bad goalie," with a German accent in English. He was a great goalie. You were a
goalies and hockey players. My sister, her husband Bill, you met. He coached at Casanova High School. He played at RPI the year they won the national championship, first Eastern team.
I got some of his. Oh, really? I got some of his lines down.
Yeah.
That was a coach. I won't say him. No, we're PG.
But product of your environment. He grew up. I was talking to him last night, and I never knew that. He said he grew where his house was. There was a hockey rink 10 yards away. Like 10, 15
Canadian.
yards away. Yeah, in Canada,
yeah,
Ontario. He right across from Buffalo, Niagara Falls. But he said, he started skating when he was 2.5. But and then you go back to Vic. A good beginning lasts a lifetime, and it's just, you're the product of your environment. And he was right next to a rink and learned to really skate, play hockey. And he walked on at RPI. He actually got a grant. Two people got a grant from an engineering firm, and he got a scholarship through this grant. He didn't get a hockey scholarship, ice hockey scholarship, but this company gave him a grant. He said,
wow.
My first semester, my GPA was 1.08.
But he hung in there. He's an engineer, right?
He hung in there. He's an engineer, and the thing about, we're getting older, and I talked to him once in New York State, and he said, Mark, he applied for he's retired. And he sold his engineering business. He had a pretty big engineering business, and he wanted to just do something. So he applied to all these engineering companies around central New York. Nobody took him, and he ended up driving an ambulance. And now he works for his my sister's son, Chip. Yeah, he's an engineer. And he said, Mark, people just don't have respect for experience. There's no respect anymore for experience. Okay, but the thing is, this guy, his stepson now, Chip is his name, Christopher, and he's pretty successful in his field. But he would call Bill every day, and no company would take him, and just ask his opinion on projects. And he brought him down. He has a big house and moved him in because he needs his expertise. So we got hope if we get older, Steve.
Yeah, how's it go? No one will hire you if you're over 55. I'm very fortunate that my students send me students, and I pretty much can work anywhere because people send me students with. How's it go? Experience is the best teacher. Daniel Coyle in his book, The Talent Code.
There you go.
Said if you're going to hire somebody, hire in their people in their 60s and 70s. I feel like all these years later, I've said it many times. The position doesn't exist, but they need an athletic director at elementary schools. Okay, let's do this. Let's put the electronic gadgets down and
great idea.
And show people how to catch and run.
Yeah.
But coming back to your brother-in-law, makes me think about Ned Harkness. I wonder if he played for Ned Harkness.
He did.
Okay, great. Yeah. Ned Harkness.
Who went to Cornell then after that?
But
Ned Harkness was a coach.
Yeah, he won 2 national titles at RPI, 2 national titles at Cornell. But I think I have to double check. But I think he went 2 in hockey and 2 in lacrosse at RPI, and then he went to Cornell and went 2 again, 2 and 2 sports.
Wow.
But with I grew up loving Potsdam, New York, where I was born. Is Clarkson College is in Clarkson University now, is in Potsdam, and people ask, who are you for? Clarkson, who's ever playing Cornell, because Cornell was so good and the discipline. I can ramble forever. I remember my brother took me to the NCAAs in Lake Placid. It was a Clarkson Cornell final, and my job for Clarkson was I was filling the
bathtub with ice.
filling the bathtubs up with ice. And this one, and don't even pay attention. This one guy said, "Hey kid, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I was told to fill all the bathtubs up with ice and fill them with beer." I thought they were going to celebrate after they won, but those lessons. I mean, they were drinking beer and shooting pool before the game started. So the Cornell team, I was a young kid at 15, and those guys they had 2 beers and they were all falling down drunk because they're so fit.
Yeah.
And but we digress. But the book Range, Mark and I are generalists. We're not a specialist. And we're watching a few people play today, and back in the day, different sport every season, and boy, the times have really changed. So.
Yeah, going back to lacrosse, Jimmy Brown just died this year, and that's why all the Cleveland Browns have a 32. He's Syracuse, he was Heisman Trophy winner, and he was also an excellent lacrosse player. A friend of Bill's played against him in lacrosse. He said the guy just got the ball and just went straight down the field and scored.
I got to ask Bill another question.
Yeah,
we'll sign off here with. I know some people are waiting for us, but with the lacrosse coach lived on the road I lived on. Cazenovia is not too far. Simmons, he coached Don Simmons' senior moment. It's another story.
It's Syracuse, the lacrosse.
It's Syracuse, but the Syracuse lacrosse coach lived in Cazenovia.
Okay.
And it was passed down from one generation to the next. But I've always been told, I've never had it verified, that when Jim Brown played lacrosse, the rule was changed. He used to just take the ball in the web, lacrosse netting, the stick, put it right across his chest and just run, and people just whack him.
Yeah.
I was told because of Jim Brown, that's why they started telling you had to cradle.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I was always told that.
He just told me last night or the night before. He said Jim Brown used to get that ball, run right down the middle of the field and score.
Jim Brown reminds me of Larry Zonka. I used to go to Syracuse football games, and he
one of my mother's favorite players.
Run all the way down. But Jim Brown, Mark and I, listeners, we can just go and talk about all sorts of sports and reminisce. With Jim Brown, used to always say that he could take on the best. At one point, it was Cassius Clay, and then Cassius changed his name to Muhammad Ali. And back in the day, Muhammad, if he had a fight in a certain city, he would train at a hotel. They put a ring right in the lobby, and it just happened with circumstance with Jim Brown. I could take him. I can take him. He gets in the ring, and he just like 14 seconds. He puts his hands up. He goes, "Okay, I understand." It reminds me of time. I used to hang out with a guy. He was 70 and I was 20, and he played for the Chicago White Sox. He was an athlete. And he was a tennis player. And he asked me to start spending some time with his son, and his son, get his son off hard drugs. And I remember one time he said, how's my son doing? He said, he's smoking pot all day. He goes, I thought you were getting him drugs. I said, I've got him off hard drugs. But this guy was a boxer. And I remember just, you try to befriend people and go, how can I reach this guy? And I said, I'll take you. I'll box you. And I said, you sit in that swivel chair over there, put on the boxing gloves. And I said, we'll go. Same thing as Jim Brown. I put my hands up like this, and they boom, 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 boom. Oh man! The one Muhammad Ali story. He was always Will Chamberlain was saying the same thing. Who loved tennis. He's also passed away. Big basketball player, 7-footer, and he used to say, "I could take Muhammad." And he has Muhammad Ali. Hey, what do you think of fighting Will Chamberlain? He just goes, "Timber." Oh man,
he was an entertainer. Ali. He was just
just float like butterfly, sting like a bee. Here, I got to sign off.
Case study.
This week, some kids are playing. One person's playing baseball, tennis, or the human ball machine. They're catching and throwing the ball. And little kid, not that young, 12, and he's kind of his hands sting a little bit because he's catching that 2-ounce tennis ball. So I hand him a baseball glove, and he doesn't know what hand to put it on. That's not funny, I guess.
Well, let me tell you my story about baseball. I wanted to play Little League baseball, and I didn't have a glove. And my brother Terry, my older brother Terry, had a really nice baseball glove. And he says, "Listen, you want to play? I'll give you my glove." He gives me the glove, but he was left-handed. So I started my Little League career with a left-handed glove, or a right-handed. Well, it was for the right hand, but it was on my left hand. But I didn't care.
I know you and like Stevie Peluso, Mark Costello, kids that we grew up with, played baseball, and I played baseball, but I really only had a good glove. It's like I couldn't throw, couldn't hit. But the reason is that I had a glove because I always want to play goalie. That's how it was in street hockey. If you're forward, you want to play goalie. If the goalies want to play forward. But here's something. Today, I'm always, calling the cell phone, and someone, this intern just left, said, Steve, it's not the phone, it's the internet. I said, okay, I'll start picking on the internet. But I asked an 18-year-old boy today, plays quite well. You're watching him out play out here. We were showing a Borg Federer forehand comparison. But before I played the tape, I said, he's the oldest junior in the room. I said, have you ever heard of Bjorn Borg? He said, no.
Oh my God.
And, it wasn't a language barrier. I mean, French is his native tongue, but it's like, whoa. I mean, but years ago when we watched TV, the parents called it the idiot box. So at least they knew what we were watching.
Yeah.
Now the parents, a lot of times they don't realize, oh, the kids are quiet. They're not hassling us. And like, I can remember Mark and I there's all sorts of forms of hockey. There's even a song about it. There's knee hockey and broom hockey and street hockey and table hockey, and you go on and on.
We played them all.
But we were playing knee hockey, and my mother had these antique plates. And boom, we break one. We clean up. We're so stupid. We're so stupid. There's 3 of them hanging up there. We break the second one. She won't notice. But yeah.
Well, I remember Hockey Night in Canada. Your TV was the only one that had the reception. Okay, and we could weekly get Hockey Night in Canada. And
my father, the engineer, he could have the antenna. My mother said the whole house would turn. She also said it was a gift from God. Because we were the only people in town that got it.
So we're all up there, and we talked to him today, Seth Barnum, and you guys started wrestling, and Seth picked you up and dropped you on the head, and the reception was gone.
I told him that. I went to see him when he was on vacation with my brother Matt. I said, that time a little older, a little bigger, a little stronger. he took me out, but nobody was worried that he took me out. It's where the humor comes from. Is that it's like, yeah, I dropped Steve's head on the floor. We hope he didn't hurt the floor. But with he took me out, but he also took the TV out. So maybe Big Jim wasn't there just to. We probably just got the antenna off kilter a little bit.
Something happened there,
but Mark, it's great to have you and your son visit. I mean, we'll try to share some wisdom.
Next time we should talk a little more about tennis.
We'll add to this.
I think your listeners should, realize that we're talking about maybe some old times or other sports stories, but you can still all relate it to tennis.
Yeah,
it's just it's the same ball of wax.
Yeah, maybe we're going to shoot for 200. A lot of people tell us that or don't change the format of these podcasts. Sometimes people just don't have the schedule, but when you start asking somebody about, where did their start in tennis, where did the passion come from? You're 40 minutes into it. I had someone just the other day, it's very moving. A parent, we're helping, say tennis is very expensive. I said, that's why we have the GreatBase. You should be able to study the content. And then I grind the kids and go, you need to, if that's the situation where your parents are helping you out, they have to realize that tennis parents can have $100 bills falling out of their pocket, and it's not like, well, I want my mom to be my mom, I want my dad to be my dad. It's like, no, they can toss you balls, and we tell the parents, okay, if you're not really confident with how to hit the ball, toss the balls and just tell them where to hit it. The target will have them improve. But it was very moving. This gentleman said, "I'm now done with 2021." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I've completed all the podcasts from 2021." I have to go back, gee, when did we start these? But we're 3 years into it, 3+. And but people hang in there. They get some nuggets. With the information, the ideas and insights we share, we call it intelligence, tennis intelligence applied. I think really our strength is application. But
getting back to the money, what you always emphasize, be your own coach.
Yeah.
Be your own coach. You don't have to, if you have the information, if you can apply it, practice it, then you can be your own coach, and you just be just as successful or more successful than paying, a high priced.
Yeah, Braden, be an independent thinker, problem solver with self-coaching.
And be famous by Friday. All
Maybe
right.
high five, Bone. All right, that's a good start. We'll come back and add to this podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
Remember, everybody, I taught him a sense of humor. He never even got people laughing before he met me. This guy's funny.
Okay.
Adios. GreatBase Tennis Podcast. We continue. 172 with Mark Hamlin. He's here in the good old US of A. American boy. He's gone back to where he's worked for a long time in Berlin, Germany. Not just Berlin, but Germany. Let me call him up. Get Mark on the phone. Mark Hamlin was the first tennis pro I trained. Going way back. Mark.
Okay, that's it.
All right, we got you. Yeah, you're back in Germany, a little bit jet lag, but Call of Duty, exceed expectations. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of Dennis Van der Meer?
Dennis Van der Meer, as well as Vic Braden, were two people who promoted the game unbelievably with a great amount of humor and creativity. I think Dennis Van der Meer, one thing I really liked about him is he got people hitting a lot of balls. You know, I mean, it really started at the beginning where that little drill, instant tennis, you know, people would give each other the tennis kiss. And then, you know, 1, 2, 3, before you knew it, the absolute worst beginners were, you know, they had hit 150 balls in the first couple minutes, you know, and he got people to get to play tennis. Maybe it's not just the way that we, you know, present it, but really, really fast. Okay. And, you know, even, you know, I think instant tennis, they bounce it up and then they do it over the net. And, you know, within 10 minutes, some of the students were huffing and puffing, or, you know, his 10-minute warm up, which I use all the time, you know, I mean, just hit a lot of balls in a short period of time, but he always kept, you know, the drills controlled. He kept the distance, you know, short, you know, that 10-minute warm up, you know, 10 volleys, 10 backhand volleys. And so they hit like a lot of balls in just the first 10 minutes. And, you know, his whole thing with, well, I call it the graduated length method, you know, shortening the racket, shortening the court, shortening the distance of the feed and that. And you know, he perfected that. And then, what else? You know, I think that was one thing he did really, really well, you know, got people to play a lot fast, hit a lot of balls. And then, you know, his group dynamics were, you know, off the charts. He was really good if he was on one court or two courts or three courts, you know, and, that's the way, you know, I saw him. Plus his humor, you know, and innovation. You talk a lot. I've heard you talk about the bathroom scale 1, bathroom scale 2, where you experienced it. He would actually put, you know, bathroom scales out on the court and have them transfer their weight from the front scale to the back scale, and you know, just a lot of things like that. You know, but
yeah, go ahead.
It's just, you know, the two things were, you know, organization of the groups, the group organization, the group dynamics, you know, the amount of ball contact, you know, was extremely high in his teaching. Okay? And then, you know, he had a method, which he documented and promoted worldwide, you know.
With Dennis, for our listeners, South African, the late Dennis Van der Meer. Genius. We have a couple. We dedicated a couple of podcasts to Dennis. I know. I asked Tom Gilly, who went to our program, got a 2-year degree. It's interesting.
I know Tom.
He was studying.
I knew Tom Gilly.
Yeah, he's studying Chinese history, and he decided to take a turn and joined us in Texas to study tennis. His wife Julie, she's you know, I think vice president, and Dan Santorum's a president. PTR, Professional Tennis Registry, with Dennis, founded in 1977.
Yeah.
With Dennis, group dynamics. That instant tennis, where you'd have players, you and I, our hockey backgrounds, face off, and right away they would, you know, you just put your racket down on the court with a partner, and then you basically have Eastern grips, and you put one ball down, and you just boopity boop, rally one ball over the one ball. So there's just a tennis ball on the court's the net, and adjustment steps. And then from there, he would just build a drill, make it grow. And, he certainly had no problem with putting a lot of people on 7,200 square feet, one tennis court with.
Oh, my gosh. And he was always, dividing the court in the other way, so he had those mini tennis nets doing the lengths and so the people, he used to claim, he could teach anybody any shot. He could teach anybody to serve. Did you ever hear this story?
Go ahead.
And he said he could teach anybody to serve. So he's doing this clinic someplace, and the guy speaks up. He says, "I got somebody you can't teach." And Dennis says, "Bring him on." Because I can teach anybody to serve. And the guy brought out the janitor, and he was always drunk, So, but it was a pretty funny story the way he tells it.
Well,
his story, his stories were also very good, But,
storytelling with the janitor must have been loose.
Yeah.
With Dennis, coming back to Jilly, Tom, bright guy. For 15 years, he ran their academy. I think they called it the World Class Tennis Academy. I've talked to Tom about being on the podcast. I know we're talking to Sujay Lama coming up, and
okay.
I don't think that we've edified Dennis enough through our GreatBase podcast. I know Jim Larry used to say, you had to see it. You had to be there in person to really.
Yeah.
I remember when we bring him into Tyler, Texas, and people would realize Braden with a fact-based instruction, and there was a few things like maybe pointing on the overhead versus initially turning. But the way, if you watch Dennis' demo, how he would shield the sun, and he did turn to the left hand. But that was his logo, and a lot of times people didn't go any deeper than that. But I used to tell the students, he is going to spin your wheels. With I actually, this is a funny story. If you remember, you were visiting one time, hiring pros for our listeners at this 2-year college, and I tested you for the PTR, and I didn't test you on the skills test, the playing portion. So Dennis called me up and, Steven, you are the world's worst tennis tester, the worst. And I just love it. It's good to get reprimanded. And I said, Dennis, we were so busy, but did you see the video, Dennis? He goes, what video? I said, I sent a video with it. He goes, I'll call you back. And the video, I just sent a video of you hitting balls and rallying, playing points, feeding, because, back in the day, you had to get the ropes out, and we were just scrambling around and didn't really have enough time. But we said, well, okay, we'll do that later. But so anyway, he called me back and he goes, Steven, we should do that with everyone. Great idea. Just so much easier to just film them. So Dennis,
there you go.
But what else comes to your mind with Dennis? You brought him to Germany many times, right?
Yeah, he was here, and you could tell how emotionally attached he was to tennis because he was there 2 or 3 times, and then his wife had this stroke, and pulled up and he canceled, and he was choked up on the phone. He said he'd never canceled the clinic before, and but then he came back again with her, and but yeah, he just was the master of the room. His presence was so. He had such an aura about him when he walked out onto the court, and the respect was there automatically.
Oh, great showman.
And he was always. Yeah, he was always open to, just like you said, he was always open to innovation because he had brought in some pros to help him when he was at our place. And actually, that's how I met Heike, because she was signed up for the Dennis Van der Meer clinic. And you want to hear the story?
Yeah, well, tell Heike, your better half, the mother of your lovely son. Go ahead.
Yes. Anyway, there was a Swedish coach named Christopher, and so there were some girls in the clinic, and there's like some coaches from Italy and this and that. And he says, "We got to go out. We got to go out tonight. I got these girls lined up." And I said, "I don't want to go out. I did not want to go out." So anyway, he talked me into it. We went out, and then we had to drive him to the airport, and Heike had a car, and so she drove him, and I went with him, and then And then a couple of days later, she called me and asked me if I wanted to go out for a cup of coffee, after she had done the clinic. But the irony of the story, we had another hiker working in our restaurant, and I thought that was her, So anyway,
get your hikers right.
It all worked out.
With coming back to Pat being in the hospital, Tom Gilly told me this story. So he's been based at Hilton Head Island for a long time. I believe the hospital was in Savannah. So Dennis takes his car, but his Ferrari, red Ferrari, and Tom, nervous driving it up. He calls up Jilly and says, "Hey, bring a van up, fill it up with tennis equipment, baskets and balls." And because outside the hospital, looking through the window in Pat's room, there was two tennis courts, and he could only be there at certain times, visiting hours. But what he did, so Pat could watch tennis out the window, and his love for teaching tennis is he put a poster up, these free tennis lessons, and Dennis Van der Meer was teaching on these two courts outside of a hospital.
Didn't he put up a sign, free tennis lessons or something? Yeah,
free tennis lessons. I mean, he was so clever. I remember at this 2-year college, he would give the lecture. I was hoping he would say 3. Sometimes he said 5. So we had as many as 100 plus. And if he said, okay, if you can't bring 5 students on Tuesday night and Thursday night when we're going to test, you might as well drop your ambitions to be a tennis teaching pro and become a librarian. So 500 students would, 500 would show up with the original 100, so the place would be packed. And you just mentioned, he had that whistle, and of course he hooked himself up with a wireless mic ahead of his time. I loved the fact that at Hilton Head, he had this very small office. You could look through the window and see the courts, because he really managed from the courts.
That's where I first signed not a contract, but I made a verbal contract with him to come to Germany in that little office. I remember exactly where it was.
But he would just be able to go in and, he'd push a button and some kid would be like 7 courts down, and he would go, Tommy, what are you doing? Court 7. Tommy. No, that's not Tommy. That's not it. He's looking around. The great communicator.
Yeah. The last time I saw him, it's sort of sad. He was, I was at Hilton Head. My sister lived there for a while, and I saw him walking across the parking lot, but you could just see he was totally demence, at the end. It's such a sharp mind that it just went that fast,
Yeah, the last time I saw him, I was at the U.S. Open, and it was, people change and look older, and so he said hello to me on Thursday, but when I saw him on Saturday, at that time, he didn't know me on Saturday. It would reverse if he didn't know me on Thursday and knew me on Saturday. Somebody said, "Yeah, I remember that guy from so many years ago." With the instant tennis, the 10-minute warm-up drill for our listeners, if you went to Tennis Intelligence Applied, a 25-hour course we have, he did so many things with Jim Verdick, and we simply call that the Verdick 10-minute warm-up drill. But the instant tennis. You mentioned the mini tennis nets. I was doing this clinic a couple weeks ago in North Carolina State. I said, Van der Meer, it really didn't work in the U.S. where, the governing body was going to have 36-foot courts and 60-foot courts. Now, the 60-foot court for 10 and unders and the green dot ball, I think that's certainly part of U.S. tennis, but not so much the 36, which was a good model for indoor courts where you could play east and west and have 6 courts. But Dennis was doing that. He was doing that, back in the 70s.
Well, before he came the first time, I went down to the shop and I didn't have any mini tennis nets because I had just gotten there. I was there for like a year, and I went down and had the guy make them, and had some steel posts and got some nets made, and he loved it, But he had these other coaches there, and he brought some in from Italy and Sweden, and there's like 5 or 6 coaches, and then so I was following him around because I was doing the translation, and then I was kind of steering the coaches around to it. He looks at me, he goes, "You really know this stuff, don't you? You really know this stuff, don't you?"
There was the tape that you would see like at a crime scene, but he found a version of that was made in Japan, and would travel with that. the master of making it happen. With I think also besides group dynamics, the corrective measures. Like on the serve, right side. I should say it correctly. Wrong side, correct side. Instead of palm up, your knuckles are up, and you actually choke up on the racket, and you hit the ball on the wrong side. Then you just have the kids go wrong side. The last second go correct side. We actually call a drill the Van der Meer drill. It's a serve where you.
Oh yeah.
It's. I mean, you spend so much time with this where you could choke up, or you could actually go down to the end, have the kids shadow swing, but they bring the racket, behind their back, and they give you that Pete Sampras look where their body is definitely at a 45-degree angle, and the racket's going up, and it's so positive for having a palm down serve and staying sideways and increasing the upward angle.
Just pronation's a thing that kind of happens on its own. I've always said, well, you don't really teach it. If you're doing it right, it's just going to happen. But he used to be able to teach it. Just that little teeny progression where you roll the ball off the top of your fingers, or just. He had a million ways of doing it, but swinging up and just touching the ball and stopping, and turning your lower arm out, and it just works so good, But then, I've always struggled with Vic would always say, well, the whole method is long term, the best way to learn, because people who learn in parts look like they learn in parts when they play, but it's just a faster way to get to the whole method. That's the way I've always sold it,
I think Vic used to also say, he goes, if you have to stand on your head, stand on your head. Do whatever you can to get the person to hit the ball better. With Dennis on the serve, for the listeners, you just take the racket and put a ball, like a sandwich, your palm in the face of the racket, and you just have the edge go up, and the ball doesn't know it's being hit by a forehand or a serve, so you have to still have a vertical racket face and swinging upward. With all the progressions, I think people needed to realize that Dennis taught group dynamics, and he as you said, he taught a method. It became standardized. And I think so many people first of all never even met Dennis in person or watched him work. I mean, pardon my French, but shut up. You can't criticize the master. But then also too is that certainly with Braden methodology, you need to study both so you can combine both. Dennis used to say, if a heart surgeon only knew procedure A and there were some complications and they didn't know procedure B or C, I mean, you die. I think people that use analogies, a very intelligent guy. I had a chance to spend quite a bit of time with his brother one time when I was on Hilton Head Island. His parents were missionaries. He had missionary zeal. I mean, he was selling tennis. He was great for the game.
Well, he was trying out for Junior Davis Cup, and he lost that last challenge match, and then he just decided, I'm going to teach the game. I'm not going to play the game. I'm going to teach the game. Wasn't that how it went?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, he was in contention to represent South Africa, so he's a very good player. But one thing I remember, being snagged, honored, I guess, to Stephen, you're hitting balls with me, but he worked. He was very conscious about certainly his appearance, but his look. I mean, he worked on demos constantly. I mean,
and his posture. He always had the chin up always a racket head up, guys like Dennis and Vic, the experience, the stories. I remember telling a story. He was somewhere in South America. I don't know if it was Chile or whatever. And he stayed at this hotel, and it was like a half hour from the courts. And so he says, how long does this take to get there? And he says, half hour. The driver says half hour. So he drives them there, and they're 10 minutes late. And so the next day, the driver shows up half hour before the clinic starts, or half hour before he's supposed to be there, and they're 10 minutes late again, and it happens the whole week. And Dennis at the end says to the driver, he said, you told me it takes a half hour, and every day we're 10 minutes late. The driver said, "Yeah, that's on Sunday. Only on Sunday."
One story reminds me of another parking. I think of a parking lot with Tyler Junior College. There's just we borrowed some vans from some families to cut the costs, and so he's there with a group of his coaches because they also served as testers. They would come in and run their tennis university, or they'd be there for a week, actually 2 weekends. So I guess 9-10 days. So a security officer comes up and says, "Excuse me, can't you read the sign?" And Dennis goes, "Yeah, I get it. Parking, fine. Fine to park here." and so, you know, but what I learned from Dennis is, you know, you can say anything you want if you have a smile on your face. With Dennis Van der Meer.
He was a refreshing personality, you know. But I remember there was at least 40 coaches, you know, in our court, and Dennis is doing this thing. A guy comes in, you know, 10 minutes late or 12 minutes late. So he'd say, "Well, what'd I do?" And he had the guy go down and do 12 push-ups right in front of the whole group, you know. So it was an element of humor there, you know, but he got the point across.
I remember Daryl Northcutt was a shy guy, and he was in the program, you know, from Canada, you know, beginning tennis teacher. And Dennis said, "Okay, Daryl, come out and teach the forehand volley." And he taught the forehand volley. And Dennis said, "You know, what do you charge for a lesson? Half-hour lesson?" And then back in the day, I think Daryl said, $20. And Dennis goes, "Well, do you think I'm 10 times better than you?" Daryl goes, "Yeah." He goes, "All right, so that means I should charge 200. You think it kept going? You think I'm 100 times better than you? You think I'm 1,000 times better than you?" I told someone the other day that Patrick Mortigulu, he's charging $7,500. I was corrected. It's not $7,500 for an hour. It's $7,500 for 40 minutes. Well, I'm pretty confident that I'm 10 times better than Patrick. I could go a little higher. I was going, gee, I could be charging $750,000 for 40 minutes. Dennis, you know, he was very, very good. It doesn't matter who he was talking to. You know, he would just captivate the group and get them in the palm of his hands.
Yeah, totally.
But I think that I'm certainly still paying my dues. I'm a member of the PTR, but I'm not active. And what a tough challenge. I don't know if anyone could.
Do they still have that? Do they still have the seminar at Hilton Head every year?
Oh, they have the symposium for sure.
Symposium.
Yeah, I don't. What I was going to say is, you know, you don't replace someone like Dennis Van der Meer. But how good a job did they do actually, you know, say Dennis did it this way, Dennis did it this way. And, you know, certainly someone travels as much as he did and you walk around the corners, you know, it's a challenge. Okay, all right, I'm teaching here now and all the different variables. But I don't think it's been replicated. You know, what we did in Tyler, Texas for 10 years where we practiced tennis teaching. You know, we had a 15-hour lab, and certainly we had once a month, we had a weekend seminar with an expert coming in. And then we had, you know, there was the Tennis Tech Club and there was extras, you know, before the 8:00 start. There was just practicing feeding, practicing demos, demonstrating, practicing hitting targets. But no, that's, I think,
you know,
go ahead.
Getting back to that 10-minute warm-up, you know, it wasn't just you know, bouncing it over the net and, you know, contact point, but then you could add in the follow through, you know, and I do that a lot. You know, I just let them do the 10-minute warm up, then we add in the follow through and you work on the follow through and then you take them to the whole swing and it just works like a charm, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, but you know, you can actually teach the whole stroke off of that 10-minute warm up if you want to, you know? But
from Dennis Van der Meer, you have to have basic shots to then grow to specialty shots and then beyond emergency shots.
And he would also, you know, he would tell a story and then he would, you know, make a point. The story he was telling over there was, yeah, I'm sure you've heard it. The lady who drove through McDonald's and she ordered coffee and she drove away and she had the coffee between her legs and the coffee spilled and she sued McDonald's for $1 million and she won, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, so he tells the story and every time there was a ball by somebody, so he'd go, McDonald's, McDonald's, McDonald's. Okay, so everybody knew, what he was talking about. Just one word, he was really efficient in what he did, had everybody under control. He had all his groups under control all the time,
Well, there's so many people currently that are walking the planet that spend a lot of hours with Dennis Van der Meer. I just think there could be a training session on, someone's going to say, Dennis, this is a Dennis idea. Dennis did this, Dennis did that. And so many things. He could teach tennis backwards, forwards, upside down, inside out. He would back chain. In other words, he would say, okay, hold your follow through and now work backwards. And then you say, just teach tennis from the contact point, just contact point and up, getting that racket face square at the hit, which was, the first thing he would do with his instant boopity boop tennis, getting all these people on one tennis court, he could, being able to teach tennis anywhere, parking lot, a playground.
Yeah.
And then adding to it. But I think a lot of times, when people who, I always say, if you're going to be critical in this country, especially if you're going to be critical of the PTR, the USPTA, join the PTR and join the USPTA. I don't think you can be an outsider, and really be critical of Dennis's work.
Well, that was one of the good things you really did at Tennis Tech those kids had to be licensed in everything. If it was a USPTR, or if it was the Racket Stringers Association or whatever, you had people come in, teach them how to string, give them a license, or make them take the test. But there was one situation there which was uneasy for you and him and Dennis. What was it? I don't know. It wasn't Mike. Wasn't Freddie Foreman, another guy. That racket back and down, and then he confronted Dennis in front of the whole class about having the racket on edge at the bottom of the backswing on the forehand.
Yeah.
And then he said something about, don't ever put me in that situation again, or something like that. Yeah.
I said that, or?
No, he came to you.
Oh, Dennis did.
And yeah. But anyway, it caused a little tension there.
Well.
Who was that? Do you remember?
I pull a name out of the hat. I think of Vic Diamond one time. He was being tested by Pat, and Vic loves tennis. Vic Diamond, and very accomplished amateur player. Played in college and did well in the age groups and stuff.
Yeah, I remember him. Vic Diamond used to play that little head racket. Yeah, he was good. He was good.
Great player. So, so he was teaching closing the racket face, and people get nervous when they're testing, and that became an argument. But I don't remember that. I remember situations like that with the tester. I don't remember any situation with Dennis like that at all. With Dennis, it
was hearsay,
Well,
anyway.
So many things with Dennis was Dennis. I mean, he, Stephen, why do you have the USPTA come here? You just need the PTR. And I'm trying to get people jobs, Dennis, and the more the better. But it went both ways. I mean, I don't think it was ever, Dennis could handle anything. So, but I would tell the students, Dennis is here. Don't ask these questions. Well, Vic Braden teaches this, and you teach that. And I said, just listen, and they were so similar as far as the end product was so similar. Dennis,
right?
Oh, Vic, and the rising socket on the backhand, and Dennis a rotating socket on the backhand. But I think it was very important to know those details. But to argue and debate, we're talking about people that have said their students have such little experience. And, it's like, come on, guys, you can't teach your way out of a wet paper bag. And Dennis Van der Meer here. I had no problem talking if I had to talk to students that way. But there was a time where it wasn't the students. It was an older gentleman. He'd been a lawyer, Walter Kerr. He'd been a lawyer. He had been a teacher, and he'd been a minister, and he'd been married 3 times. So the guy could talk. And he was a great friend. And he was in his 70s, and he would audit the program. I mean, he could just come and hang out. He wasn't taking tests. He didn't have to hand in any papers. And I told everyone, I said, don't, a lot of people, when they raise their hand in a setting like that, it's an identification they're not really asking anything. They just want to raise their hand and be identified. And
Yeah.
so all sorts of get you type questions and on and on. So it was going back and forth. And, Dennis, even though he wasn't upset by it by any means. And he said to me, he said, Stephen, what do you think the difference is between Vic Braden and me? And I said, he has more gray matter. And in gray matter is the part of the brain that helps restore, store memory and store facts and stories and this and that and the other thing. And Dennis just said, Stephen, you son of a and, he laughed. He laughed. I laughed. And no. So
there was an advantage to that, though. Racket back and down, that racket on edge, and the forehand, and those people that were going through these steps, they got the ball over the net much easier. That racket face was a little bit open, and it went over the net. Okay, and so he got him. That's what I'm saying. He get people to play tennis so fast. And there was a thing he used to say about the gorilla, wasn't it? If the gorilla is teaching and he's getting people to get the ball over the net faster than you are, then he's a better teacher.
Right. Like yeah, for sure. You got to get people to rally, and you got to get. Dennis is right. You got to get people to be able to rally so they stay connected with the sport. With
instant success, that was his.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Braden, Braden asked me all sorts of questions about, like say Dennis Van der Meer, Welby Van Horn, intellectual curiosity. But the way Vic would be with a large audience, for the most part, and what Vic put together for group dynamics of the facility, Coto de Caza, Time Magazine called it the best tennis teaching facility in creation. And there's still things about Coto that are not replicated today. And but Vic, and they're both like so funny. But Vic, for the most part, he would teach one person, and he could have 100 people watch.
Yeah,
and that's the way he could do that. Dennis certainly could do that too. But Dennis would look around and go, "Okay, I'm going to get people having some fun and hitting some balls and action." So he
was also so active. I mean, if you would do a demonstration, say you'd have 6 people on the baseline, shadow swing at forehand, holding their follow through. He would just jog down. He would make sure he touched every person. He would, turn his racket a little bit to this way, and maybe turn this person's hips a little bit, and he would just really quick, do boom, 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 boom. Okay, and then and then through that he had everybody's attention, and everybody had recognition, in the group. I
would say Vic's curiosity took him off the court too. He wasn't one of these people looking to get off the court by any means. But his intellectual curiosity took him off the court, took him in the lab or the studio. And Dennis never got too far away from the court. But the one thing, both of them as well, but Dennis Van der Meer had a work ethic. We had a young man visit here. We call him Rami Baby, our super intern. And,
I met him. If I met him in Dusseldorf, I think, didn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, he's, maybe 13. We were going through it. I had lunch with Ram and his father today, and now he's a college graduate. He's working in New York, and he's a successful guy and working with a team of 9, and he has stamina. That's what But he grinded it, and I think that Dennis Van der Meer, the work ethic, just up and let's go, and he'd have a green apple for lunch, and he's going to hit balls during lunch. It's just the energy level. That's something that has to be built. You don't just say, okay, now I'm going to be a hard worker. You have to build that over time. And, I think, kids today get pampered so much. The generation before us, obviously it was tougher times, and, things become easier. They don't necessarily become better. Toughness. Dennis, sorry to interrupt. Dennis, he had a bone spur. I remember taking to a guy by the name of Dr. Shepard, and he got a cortisone shot, and he left the medical center with crutches, and he was going to leave like on the following Monday or whatever. And Steve, just bring the crutches back, and he used the crutches to the car. Then he said, Stephen, don't take them back until he asks, but I'm not using those again. And, the next day he's out there hitting balls, and, the doctor didn't think that he'd even be able to walk. So, some people, it's like, when's lunch? They can't go without lunch.
Smitty,
Yeah.
don't make them like they used to. Yeah.
With, was he well received in Germany?
Oh yeah. I mean, I got a list the first time he came from all the coaches from the tennis federation. I just called and tried to sell it. So we'd had 40, 45 pros at the end, and then he tested them all, and it was good. It's really good.
I think
he's a piece of work, Dennis. I mean,
when we talked about when we started with the podcast with Germany, you said I'd been in Berlin 4 times. I certainly just traveled through there. Maybe it was there 4 times to do some type of programming, but I was.
Well, let me tell your listeners a story.
Let me say this story before I forget. So, hang on. So, with Vic Braden, you were at the Vic Braden Tennis College, and you had your match program. We could even talk about the title, Modern American Tennis System. But I think it was 3 summers in a row. And then the German Tennis Federation told you, if you bring that guy back, we're not going to rent any more courts from you. Why don't you talk about that? I hope I didn't. Don't forget your idea.
No, but I remember. I'll tell your listeners, my last name's Hamlin. So that Hamlin got to Hambone, and then it got to Boney and whatever. So you were staying at that apartment I had, and with me, and then you had been in Sweden, and you had some kind of a stomach flu, and you were just like hurting, but you did it. I mean, you came through, you did the program. And so the last day, you were struggling, but you did the job. It was really okay. And the last morning you woke up, stood up and said, I think I kicked it, Boney. I think I kicked it, Boney. I'll never forget that. I think I kicked it, Boney. So
I don't remember that, but I remember
Carla Navarro was there, and you were talking to her a lot, and you were just like hanging on,
I remember
but, last morning, I think I kicked it, Boney.
I remember being at this junior college, and it's just crazy that if they gave you sick days, like, you get so many sick days, so many vacation days, so many sick days, and I'm going.
Oh, it's like Germany.
I remember having a really high temperature, but I went in and I got things organized, and then went back. And the time I was there, I never missed one day. The world's work is done by what the people don't feel well. I mean, how's it go? But I was interrupting you. But the listeners, Berlin, you touch upon. You were the part owner at one time. Now you're not. Now you're out of that, but you're still at that club. How do you pronounce it? Havenhalle?
Havellandhalle. Havel. There's a big river here, the Havel, Havel. It's a Havelland, and then he threw Halle at the end.
It's a beautiful place. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's still done. They're building 96 apartments here with an underground. The parking's all going to be underground, and he's just going on and on and on. I got to, raise some court prices or something, and I got to talk to him about that, because that's not what we agreed upon. But it's just been my situation here is just that I really like teaching tennis. I mean, I fell into a niche that I've really enjoyed, but sometimes it's just you do an hour, and then the next group comes for an hour, and next group comes, and then you go to your place where you can just 3 courts and minimum amount of kids, and you can just work with them. So if you look back, but I was going to say one thing about, getting back to the good beginnings. That's a 6-court center. It's beautiful. And sometimes I'll be teaching, and I'll look down on court 6, and I'll see somebody hitting the ball. And you can just tell that they, because I was there for a long time, and I was gone for 3.5 years, and I came back, and you can just say, that person learned here, Mm-hmm. And then you go down there, and you meet him in the hallway or whatever, and the kid who was back then, he was 8, like he's down there with a beard and his girlfriend or his wife,
Yeah.
So, wow.
No,
you can just tell we've taught so many people here. What?
No, you've touched a lot of lives. Here's one, Van der Meer. Maybe we can move on. There's so many things, but it would be get together with a group of people and go, okay, just give me an idea from Van der Meer. And, I go to the next coach and whatever. And, I guess that's what education is, sharing. But so with Dennis, I coached a girl by the name of Laura Hannon. She became really good. And she played at Texas A&M, obviously a major university in Texas. And, she was from Tyler, Texas. And so then I just told her, I said, Dennis is going to pick you out, because she was just a very good tennis player. She was going through his tennis university. And sure enough, he calls her out. He does the Bobby Riggs trick serves. He's swiping across the ball one way and another way, and the ball, it's like it hits the court, and it's like one of those zigzag balls. I said, he's going to call you out, and this is what he's going to do. He goes, we're going to play a set. He goes, we'll just play a game. I'll serve. And usually he would beat people at 4 points, and you go, you can sit down now. so Dennis calls her out, and I said, when he calls you out, you go right up to the service line, and you go the opposite way that racket goes. So if he swipes it left, you go right, and she gets the first one back, and she gets the second one back. And then so.
If the racket goes right to left, the ball's going to go left to right.
Yeah, so exactly. So then he just looks at me and he goes, Steven, you son of a...
Sounds just like it,
With I remember another time I learned so much from Van der Meer with the alpha dog. You're traveling, you're doing a clinic, you got to pick out the alpha dog. And so actually, as a young boy that I coached, and he's one of those guys who's shaven at age 14, and he became a good tennis player, but he was ahead of the class a little bit, the juniors, because he was just so much bigger and stronger. And so Dennis, he's just trying to tee off on every ball, and a lot of times when you bring a junior out, and there's 50 people watching them, they've never been in front of 50 people. They just have mom and dad and maybe a few other relatives. That's the maximum crowd they've had in their tennis days. So Dennis would feed a ball, drop the racket, and cover his eyes. And then he'd have one of his assistants, and the kid would miss the court. And he would, he'd say, "You'd lose to a blind man without a racket." It's just amazing. Kids today, they don't go rally. They're just in a program. They never get together and go, let's just try to hit 1,000 balls up the middle. They just don't do that.
Well, the other thing Dennis is so good at is the names. Like he would have 30 people, okay, and he would have him introduce himself once, right at one after the next, and then he would go back and name them. But you told me he was cheating because he had a list of the names before the clinic started, and he would study the names first.
No. I would have never told you that because I knew he didn't do that.
Oh, really?
No. Bone, you're getting
Somebody
old.
told me that was his trick. He would look at the list of names.
No. I'm so much younger than you. I remember one time being in Indonesia, and I think that's the only time I ever studied the names. And the guy had given me the wrong list. I was telling
he was good with names.
I was telling some. We just had some players come in from Charlottesville, a high school in Charlottesville, and one kid's name is JB, and I go, it just reminded me of Texas because years ago in Texas, it seemed like in an adult clinic, every woman had two names, like Betty Ann and Mary Lou. Yeah. And then there's JB and JW. But no, I mean, tricks of the trade. Dennis used to say, "Let me show you a trick." I one time was in El Paso. You tell stories, but it's visual for me. And okay, go and. There's 60 plus, and they have a coach from France and his wife, and they're there to help me. And I'm just going to have them film. I'm going to film every kid there, so I don't need their help for the clinic with 60 people. But I just been at Kalamazoo, so I look around, and no one told me, but I picked out the alpha dog. The way teenage boys are, and so I picked this kid out, and put him through the tiebreaker test, and he failed. But I said, okay, this is how we're going to film, and then I had him on film from the beginning of the clinic, and those are the type of things. Dennis was definitely a master at group dynamics, and okay, you have to really take on the bully. You got to take on the bully. I can remember just so many stories with the team players at Tyler Junior College. You know, they're all young, and they were just young kids. You know, they were very good. They were, you know, they were better players, and for the most part, than the players that were in the program.
In the program, yeah.
And they were cocky, and you know, Dennis, he could just very quickly read not only an individual, but read an individual within a group and make it work. Let's talk about Vic for a minute. What comes to your mind with Uncle Vic? You spent so much time in California, then in Europe, being on his staff.
Yeah, I mean, it was just it's incredible experience, and you know, big part of it. You and myself, or you and I, would sit in the back of that classroom at every opening lecture. You know, I mean, a lot of it was repeated. A lot of the stuff was repeated, but when I look back at it, that was really a good foundation for really understanding the Vic Braden concept, and a lot of it, you know, still. I know what he meant back then. You know, it's like reading the Bible. I mean, you just go further and further into the meaning of things. But you know, it was Saturday morning. We had the lecture. No, I'm sorry, Monday morning, and then Tuesday night with the white pizza, and then the Saturday morning. And those were really great lectures. You know, he used to get up there and entertain and throw out the facts and. But one of the things that I remember was, you know, little jokes he made, more or less, which were really, you know, there was so much behind it. Like, it's hard to hit a crooked ball straight, you know. It's hard to hit a crooked ball straight, you know. So, you know, that cross court down the line, the 19.1 and this and that. Okay, but you know, he'd make it like in a joke form, but there was always a pretty deep meaning behind it. You know, hit deep down the middle, beat everybody in the world.
You know, the song, "It Never Rains in Southern California" at the Vic Braden Tennis College. If it rained, you'd get a rain check. If it was a rain out, you know, there would be no charge. But what Vic would do is he would be in the classroom the whole day, and I was just pray for rain. Because it was like, yes,
it only rained once.
Yeah, he's going to talk for 8 hours with. No, our listeners, Mark's easygoing. I actually remember coaching adults. I remember Scotty Perelman, who's been a guest on our podcast. One time he said, "Smitty, I think you're too easygoing to coach players, coach juniors." But we were working with adults back in the day. There was no homeschooling. There was no juniors. It was people that were on vacation. It was in the summertime. You would work with juniors. I mean, there was private lessons. And it wasn't like there was programs, but there was adult camps during the school year and summer camps for kids. And so I have I have three older brothers, but that's where you're an easygoing guy. But I said, Hamlin, I treated you like your little brother. You would have done it anyway. I go, Hamlin. Because a lot of the coaches, not to pick on them, but a lot of them be out on the deck eating orange slices, or you could go shoot baskets. I remember Vic, it was a compliment. He said, Steve, your coaches, they show up 15 minutes early with a clipboard and they're asking me what they could do. My coaches show up 1 minute before it starts. They run in the door with their tennis racket. Because
right. Remember the coaches room up there?
Yeah.
You know, you go up there, open the door, and they're up there sleeping in their breaks and stuff, you know?
Yeah, I one time got the staff. It was a VIP lesson, and there was a meeting, and Vic seldom had meetings. You know, like, okay, we're having a meeting now. I mean, there was a set meeting, but it was like, okay, this is just, you know, okay, there's a meeting now. It wasn't scheduled.
Yeah.
So I walk in, and he'd already asked everybody, do you think of this as a career position or a stepping stone job? And I said, stepping stone job. And he said, why? I said, because we don't work very hard. I said, in the real world, I said, you know, we'd be grinding it. And, you know, we used to just have, you know, you would teach 3 45-minute classes in the morning and 3 45-minute classes in the afternoon. That was it. You're just done. You didn't have any other responsibilities, but just to teach. You know, and actually too, Vic.
I thought back then.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say you overpaid the coaches in the sense where when if they were there, it added up. You paid them X amount of dollars more per year that they were there, and their responsibilities didn't increase. And and that facility was so nice. I mean, a lot of ways you're better off to work at a place that's not so nice and not so easy if you really want to grow. I mean, it's like But go ahead, Uncle Vic.
Yeah, well, hit a cricket ball straight. I mean, it's just hit deep down the middle, beat everybody in the world. And there's just so much to that. Gain time, push the opponent back, reduce the angle of return, that type of thing. But he would just kind of make a little cute saying out of it. But if you really think a lot about that stuff, if you tell kids today, "Oh, just hit it down the middle, deep,"
And we had Joel Trucker on. What a tennis mind, great guy to listen to, and he talked about how the two-handed backhand's really changed tennis, and it certainly has.
Yeah.
But with the tennis math, people coming in and with the elbows in, they have a strong continental grip. They stop, the body weight's going down.
Are you talking on the volley or what?
Yes, on a volley. Actually, for our listeners, if people would go back and listen to Giddy and Ariel and Vic, what a team! What a team they were. Because Vic was a self-made biomechanist. He by formal study he was a psychologist, but he was a self-made biomechanist. But the thing also too is that Vic, he taught people how to play. He did his time, as you would say, in the trenches. And I think too many coaches now, it's like, come on, who have you even taught? Have you ever even taught anybody? And it's all this consulting and recruiting, and you didn't teach that person how to play. And now it's more like romancing the player. They're more a confidant or a mentor, which is important. But don't be pretentious. It's like, well, you actually taught the person how to play. But Vic, that time that he was at the Kramer Club, but he spent time. Okay, I've got an hour private lesson. I'm going to get this kid to hit the ball better.
Lindsay Davenport played here, exhibition here, and I talked to her, and she could hardly remember him. But he was the one who made it. You can just see it in the game.
Well,
when she plays.
I think with certainly positives with Davenport. My favorite story with Davenport, her father-in-law recently passed away, Dick Leach, and her husband is a Leach, and her brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Her son is an excellent tennis player. I haven't seen him play in person, but he's representing the United States. So, hats off to.
He's doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. So, but someone who I worked really with the dad, Karina Marario, they won Wimbledon together. So here, Davenport's got a Wimbledon title, and she says, "Well, in my family, they don't even allow me to talk about doubles." And I think that's a great story. And she says that because, she was not someone who was serving and volleying and coming in, and she didn't have the Martina Navratilova look. I mean, she was number one in the world. She was a great tennis player, but
at the same time, singles and doubles.
Right. I think that. I mentioned that to Joel Trucker with, Braden was there first and Lansdorp was there second. I remember telling Elliot Telscher that one time, if you flip that around, because Vic, he just, he was just going to get people to hit the ball really well, but he wasn't.
Did Elliot Telscher remember him? Do you ever remember him?
Yeah, I mean, how can you forget Vic Braden? But yeah, but when you're really young, I would say it's the same thing. I mean, I think with Tracy Austin, she's, you have to look at their age in the chronological order. But the Austin family, the mother worked the pro shop. I mean, Jean Austin played some mixed doubles with Vic, and Tracy has 4 older siblings. So, I think Lansdorp came in, and he said, okay, we got to drill. You got short, compact swings. You got to hit the ball deep. You're going to get a short ball, and you got to tag it and come into the net. So I think that was a great combo. That was a great combo. And the order, I mean, you got to get the bowl before you get the ice cream. And but when you think about players, I say this all the time. If you want to ask what Roger Federer was doing when he was 8, you don't ask Roger, you ask his parents. And Vic left, and the reason Vic left is that he was interested in making more money because he was funding his own research.
Yeah,
and so he, and we've always talked about it, and I've talked about it with Vic at length. We put something on a podcast last week. There's someone who said that he had talked to Vic about hitting a linear forehand. It's just like, that's not. He wasn't. I'm sure the gentleman has been in tennis a long time, and a guy named Chuck Tomlin, and said, well, I talked to Vic about changing that, and Vic would just say, if you have the scientific rationale, we'll change it, Johnny, on the spot. We're going to follow the science. But he certainly, Vic used to say that, he was always asking about documentation about what was accomplished at Tyler Junior College, for example, that people are either going to resent what you do or they're going to respect what you do. I could talk about Van der Meer and Braden all day long. I think that's a strength of the GreatBase is that, the GreatBase is just a study. It's just homework. But even like, say, Tracy, for example, when she speaks and talks about Vic, I mean, she's just talks about the human element. He's a world-class person, and how much fun he made it. But people need to realize that Vic's going, well, when I was coaching Tracy, I didn't realize this on the serve. He didn't, how the shoulder formulates the swing and the 90 degrees, like that salute position, or how like say the football goes between your shoulder and your elbow. But that's humility. I didn't understand this. Joel Trucker asked me about Van Horn. Let me just say that Joel Trucker asked me about Van Horn, and Welby was just the times, but he knew, that he should not have, because he'd have kids get through the 14s and then think, okay, championship tennis, grass courts, and go forward. Is that he really promoted to go a little bit above an Eastern forehand grip. But I think Trucker's a smart guy. He goes, yeah, it was the times, and but it's always about getting better. It's never about how's it go. Winners are never satisfied. Losers are easily gratified. And
that's a good one. I have to write that one down.
How about the lanes? Tell us about the lanes.
Well, I remember when I was out there the last time at Coto, Vic and I took a walk through memory lane, and the lanes were like one of the big points of Coto de Caza, and they were, that net they had on the top was all falling down, it was all rotted out, and the paint was all chipped up. I mean, just it was really kind of sad, because I just remember when it was just just pumping out there. Those balls were going out the lanes, and then what was how many balls an hour did you say you could hit on those things? Like 1,800 or whatever.
I think it was 945 minutes.
Okay, yeah. Hey, but that was a great system.
It was every 4 seconds. So I get her fact checker on that.
So I learned my first Spanish. Paletas, por favor. Okay.
I like how you. I like how you got. You remember you said from an aerial shot, it looked like a grapefruit. The geometric set, tennis courts, and
Well, do you remember? Funny lane story. Okay, the lanes were going, and then the road blows, and everybody goes in, and the door was locked, and everybody's piling up there like crabs in a barrel. Okay, and up on the top on the coach's room steps was Chevy Chase. He had locked us all in. He's up there smiling.
I could tell lots of stories about Chevy Chase. Funny guy. with everything from just filling out the first form. For our listeners, you could YouTube Chevy, the young people, that he was a writer. And then he went from writer to being in front of the camera, Saturday Night Live. You know, he was only with Saturday Night Live 1 year. And, you know, you look back at his career and, you know,
I heard he was discovered in a waiting in the line to get in a movie theater. He was just cracking all these jokes and cracking everybody up. They're waiting to buy tickets, and somebody kind of discovered him there. So
I used to use the term verbal heavyweight, and he was a verbal heavyweight. I made the mistake of chirping him a few times, and it's like, okay, this guy's a little better at it than I am. With the lanes, it took people out of the context of the court. Listeners, it was a geometric set tennis court, and you know, it was up high was red, it was yellow, and below the white line,
target area
it was brown, and to elevate the ball.
They didn't have a net until you practice volleys, and you would put the net up. Remember, you hooked the net up to practice volleys.
Yeah,
but with the ground strokes, they didn't have the net. You just went for the target areas.
Yeah, and the targets represented the 19.1 degrees.
Yeah,
and where you hit from, and
So you practice not hitting a crooked ball straight. Then you know, you hit a straight ball.
But straight. You know, like any great teacher, it got people to slow down, self-evaluate. You know, you know, if somebody's really going to change their strokes, one of the worst places to go is the tennis court. You could take them out of the context of the court and say, okay, hey, we're going to go over to the backboard. Parking lot, the field, you know, classroom. Just repeat this movement over and over again. You know, eventually you have to get to the tennis court. But I used to think it was magic when Vic would, someone had a. Well, let me just say it. You've got new grip, old wrist. Because if you don't have a backhand grip, you're approaching the ball, you're going to collapse your wrist and get the racket face vertical. So when you get a new grip and you collapse your wrist, the ball goes straight down. And so he knew where the ball was going to go before they hit it. So, you know, he knew so much about the brain before he started studying the brain. That
was the quote was, if the pain you're suffering and losing the people is greater than the pain making changes, then you'll try like heck to make changes, you know. If you're losing, you always talk about 6'3", you lose to the guy, and you go to Vic Braden's, and you know you can't beat your grandmother, okay? And then you come back and say, well, I guess I'll be satisfied losing 6'3", you know.
Yeah, I went to his tennis school, United States Tennis Academy, and we had it twice a year. And 6 months later, I went back. I went bang, back to back, and so there was only one other student that was repeating. And I raised my hand because I remembered the time before, and you know, he had a continental grip, and he was rolling it forehand side, and Vic was just telling him, press the palm down, press the palm. He wasn't telling him change the grip. So I said, why aren't you telling him change the grip? He said, I'm not a toad. He said, I was here 6 months before, and he didn't change it then. So I'm going plan B because he didn't buy into plan A. I took a player who became very good, Ryler DeHart. You probably met him over the years. He became one. He became one in the NCAAs, 174 in the world. Played Nadal on Arthur Ashe, and you know he was started with Thomas Olerstedt, a tennis techer. Worked with me for a long time. He went to college, and he was with Craig Tiley, a tennis techer, and so great kid. You know, the mom, single mom, bringing him up. We took him to raise some money. Took him to cover the fee. Worked with Vic a couple of times, and he didn't. He was letting that left arm fly on the forehand. And Vic said, do this right now. Go 2-1-2, catch the racket, and gave him all the rationale. And then the kid goes, I don't like that. It makes me feel real stiff. And in fact, Vic said, okay. And I was like, okay. And I gave you the sauce. There's no secret sauce, but I gave you the info. So anyway, I met with Ryler afterwards. I met with Ryler afterwards and said, hey, Ryler, just do what he tells you to do. I mean, come on, just do what he tells you to do. Jeez.
That's the sergeant in you. That's the sergeant in you.
Yeah.
He used to say, if anything that feels natural usually doesn't produce a desirable result. You know, if it's, because he would always say it's not a natural game. You know, okay? And so well, it just doesn't feel right. You know, but
the sergeant. I wasn't really the sergeant until I got into junior tennis, but I guess I was as a hockey player trying to, you know, so you a goalie, like move a defenseman and move somebody who outweighs me by 50 pounds so the goalie could see the puck. But one job I had at one time at Coto de Caza when they had a big function and there were substitute coaches. I remember, hey Steve, do me a favor. The coaches who can't hit the ball well, make sure they practice in the back. And I'd have to go up to people and say, yeah, I know you're working, but you know, really, you just go practice in whatever they were, 11, 12, the courts in the back, because I just
where was this?
It was at Coto, you know, so
okay.
there weren't that many functions, but they did have a sub list. You know, a lot of people say, well, yeah, I worked for Vic forever, but you know, they're on the sub list. They weren't, you know, on the day
like
in.
Jim Ginsigan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
He was owned the place with Perelman, right?
Yeah, he owned the place with Perelman, and I remember one day I wake up in the morning. I said, "It's kind of bright out here today," and I'm sitting down eating breakfast, and the phone rings, and I pick up the phone. It's Perelman on the phone. He goes, "You're fired." I said, "What?" He goes, "You're not up here. You're fired." And I said, "I got to be up there at 9 o'clock." Okay, well, there had been an earthquake. And the power had gone off, and the night I had electricity went out. I just answered, "You're fired." Okay, I said, "What?" So I just came up. Come on, Scott. You know. So,
yeah, you know, we were also young. We were in our 20s. Perelman, you know, someone was going to be the head coach on the weekend, and he really wanted to be the head coach on the weekend. I mean, but yeah, I remember that with. Pearl, he's the one. I say it all the time. I see someone to this day. It's a new day. It's a new opportunity to excel. He's a dynamo. I mean, he's been a college coach forever.
Where is he now?
University of Florida.
Okay.
University of Florida. Another coach that we spent a ton of time with, Matt Clores there. And, you know, Pearl was talking about Matt Clores' skill set. He goes, this guy knows Braden. And I'm just listening. He goes, oh, yeah, Smitty. You taught him, and but I don't really think of someone like Matt Clore being a student of mine.
He was over here.
Yeah. I don't think of him being a student of mine. I think of him being it's being a student of the information. It's like, I've had people that I've trained that they don't tell people where the information came from. We have that all the time where we have ghost followers. You know, someone told me, I've been told that by many people, but just recently, is that, you know, the word that we're sharing is getting out, but it's not necessarily getting out where we're being recognized as a resource. Right. It's getting out because people are copying it, and they're just, you know, not
giving the credit where the credit is due.
Yeah, just, you know, but you know, we're not looking for a pat on the back, but the thing is that, you know, a lot
of people say to me, "Oh, you're such a good tennis coach." But, you know, I said, it's really not me. It's the system, you know. I mean, the system's doing the work, you know. Well, I just can apply it better than a lot of people, you know. Well, that's because I know it so well. I mean,
yeah, the experience, the word application. One thing about, you know, someone like Vic, if you really study the system, I do think something's missing if you didn't have the chance to work with Vic, the person. But at the same time, the more you work the system, the more you can learn. In other words, say, you know, the time that you and I were at Coto de Caza, and then we left. I was fortunate at another way. I know you went to work. You went to Europe and worked in a Vic Braden Tennis College, or a couple of them, but Vic Braden wasn't necessarily there all the time. Yeah. And then when I went to this college to train tennis teachers, we were using Braden textbooks. We were using his books as textbooks. So, you know, if you're just to read the information, we make videos for students, you know that, we've been doing that forever. So if you're really motivated, you're going to go to your computer, you're going to watch it 3 times minimum. And what you can do is push pause and write it down sentence by sentence. I mean, it's not my information, but it's just pearl after pearl. You know, so
one of the great.
Go ahead.
one of the great things that helped me was, remember that girl, Daria?
Oh, for
I was
sure.
out there. I was out there 4 times with her, a couple of times, 2 weeks, and we were doing like 5 hours a day, and Vic, back then he took, I think, $250 an hour, but it was so well worth it, and it was just like Vic, myself, and Daria, and sometimes I brought a hitting coach with me too, one time I was can I tell a story? The hardest time I saw, or the most I ever saw Vic Braden laugh, is David Squires at the net, and he's feeding Daria balls, and Vic's on the other end filming her, and okay, and it's PG, but this is okay. So Vic's on the other side filming her, right, and Vic says in his very nice way, Daria, I can still see that racket behind your butt a little bit. And David just turns around and says, yeah, Vic, she's either going to get a fatter ass or a smaller swing, okay? Or a smaller swing. Okay? And Vic started laughing so bad, I thought he was going to drop the camera on the ground. Yeah, Vic, she's either going to get a fatter ass or a smaller swing. And he was just cracking up, but he was a funny guy, he could take it,
Squire,
and
for our listeners in Aussie that you spend a lot of time with, I spent a lot of time with, he's a funny guy. Oh my word. But Martina Hingis. So I spent a lot of time with Daria in Germany. You sent her our place many times, and she should have stayed the course. And I remember the thing about pro tennis, and you had somebody trying to work as a sponsor, and but this is for our parents as well. I remember my son Connor going, why don't you just take her to UCLA? Go show her, some major campus, because she was good enough to play, but she had, the idea, was to go pro, and she hadn't done due diligence from an academic standpoint to have that option. Daria, no, she hit the ball so well. And, I know that your facility, such a beautiful facility, but it didn't have red clay. That would have helped her out a little bit more if she's spent more time in the red clay, but she hit the ball so well. She could have made a living playing doubles. But I remember the last time she was at my place.
There's 3 or 4 late girls out on the tour still that she had winning records against in the juniors,
But Martina Hingis, was last time she was at our place, and she was ready to give it up, and we were all teenagers, and on the phone with you and this and that, but Hingis was calling up because Hingis had helped her out, and Hingis just knew that she could play doubles. I mean, the worst case scenario is that she could make a living playing doubles. But yeah, with Vic, it's really interesting. Like, you remember working with Ruben Perchek, and a lot of the coaches were saying Vic won't like his forehand. The racket's too up high. It's too high in my English. The racket's too high. And I said, no, I think he's going to like it because it's a vertical drop, and he gets more racket hit speed. He's not taking it that high on the return. And Vic said, yeah, the higher the better. As long as because you just don't want that racket going back where you have a horizontal pull. This young guy, Ryan Reedy, you ever look at 2-minute tennis? Yeah, he does
all the time. Not all the time, but he does good videos.
He does a great job, and but he put something out, and Jim Klein really is the person who trained him. And I think perhaps like a weekend or two, maybe more, but he didn't spend much time in person with Vic. But he's an outlier. He's been teaching tennis since he was like 18, and with Jim Klein being the boss and whatever. But I was just I was sent something, and Jim asked me to critique it, and I sent it to, and obviously Ryan was forwarded my critique, and I said, Vic used to talk about the racket face. If you want to volley the continental grip, you can volley the continental grip, but the racket face, where is it for that 3 to 6 millisecond hit? And, I know Vic got a kick out of it. We just do it all the time. I did it last week at this coach's clinic I ran. The dimensions of the court and physical laws. It sounds like mechanical prayer. The dimensions of the court and physical laws dictate stroke production. No coach's opinion or any unique theory. That comes back to what you said, crooked to straight, with there's only one ball and you have it. So with that, we make these videos and, write it down sentence by sentence. You will not be able to use gravity. The racket will not free fall. You will not be able to be loose. You'll have to recruit the muscles. But that's the type of discipline it should take, is to take it and write it down sentence by sentence. People who really pay attention to what you do or what I do, and then if they were to really slowly read Braden's book, they just know we're just reciting sentence after sentence out of that book.
Oh yeah,
it just stands the test of time.
Well, some stuff wasn't in the book, like a statistic that always sticks in my head when you're, on the volley. If you take a ball at shoulder level, I'm pretty sure the numbers are true. You take a ball at shoulder level on the service line with a volley, and you can hit it at 70 miles an hour, which is about 110 kilometers an hour. Okay, at shoulder level with a vertical swing in the volley, and you can't get the ball over the baseline with a vertical racket head because the gravity's so strong, But if you open that racket head 2-3 degrees, then you're on the curtain,
Doesn't he add to it though? If you can, if you got hair on your tongue, I mean, with
I never heard that.
Yeah, it's something. The gorilla comment. He's got some one-liners. Coming back to Squire, the Aussie, is that Henry. He's got off track a few times. His son, but he's been ranked 1 in Germany as a junior, and
he won the nationals.
Yeah, he won the men's nationals, right? So every college coach,
not this year. Yeah.
The college coaches were all after him, but that's where just stay the course. I mean, you always work on efficiency. Well,
Steve, I don't mean to break you off. I had on my ride home with my son, he just let loose on me. And, at the end of the drive, I gave him a piece of my mind, but,
you did give don't give him a big piece, Bone. I'm just kidding.
But and then I talked to Heike, my wife and her girlfriend or whatever we are. And, she gave him the whole thing that we weren't tough enough on him. But what I think really got under his skin is that, Johnson, what's his name?
Spencer Johnson?
Spencer.
Yeah.
He went to UCLA. He's going to UCLA and I'm going to Lewis and Clark. And you weren't tough enough on me when I was a kid. And, and you should have pushed me more. You should have pushed me more. And, and one time he was talking about the pain of regret,
Yeah.
But,
no, it's, and Spencer, I think for our listeners, I made a video today for Spencer, trying to tweak his serve. I think that he doesn't turn enough. It's not so much the head, not so much turning, is his head doesn't get over his back foot. And, so.
On Spencer's serve.
Yeah. So when he hits, that it's so crucial, people listening, that his hip pulls out. It should look like you're climbing a vertical ladder at a 45-degree angle. It should just look like right at the moment of truth, right at the impact. That's why you want to listen to Gideon Ariel. You can see movement, but you can't see forces. It's like the body's crumpled. I mean, he's not powered out. He's not at that T line. No, I know when he was here with with Spencer though, one thing with Spencer though is, and I was flattered that I was asked, is I said, no, I'm all for him going on it. If I had a vote, I would send him on a mission. Always take more time. And, there's a spiritual side to that for, it's personal, it's religious, the LDS missionaries, but with, take more time. And it's like, go to work now. If you can't go back. And it's like with, I talked to him about, when he was here, I mentioned, team tennis in Europe and, playing age groups and, with, I remember Jim Lair saying, I've had a problem with my feet for a long, long time, but I pretty much stopped playing tennis when I was first at Tyler Junior College because, I had a competitive edge. And it's like, okay, I'll train and I'll play these guys. And talking about Scotty Perelman, one year he won the Big Eight, and his name was Franco. And I used to practice with Franco, and I certainly had Franco's number. I remember telling Scotty, I can still play for you. Franco's number 6 for you. Smitty, don't want to hear it. But yeah, I started playing tennis.
You used to always tell kids, I don't know if you still do it, if they're going to a university to play, buy yourself a basket of balls, find a backboard, find a court where you can drop hit, and just go back and keep working on your basics,
No, it's what lens you're looking through it. I watch a college tennis match. Certainly, it sounds egotistical, but it's just, what have you seen? There's a line in the movie Rudy, the football movie about the kid who climbed up and made the roster.
Played at Notre Dame.
Got to play a few plays, and his father, was in the stadium and said, "This is the most beautiful sight that these eyes have ever seen." You should have said besides my wife, but anyway, there's a line in the movie, and I certainly think I know you do too. Is that I should say I know. I see fireworks, and it's when you've been looking at it for a long time, you come in and you do video analysis on stroke production or strategy. That's just not part of the tennis culture. It really is not. That's where I'm a big fan of football. It's like, you send us a film of your last game. We'll send you a film of our last game, and we'll study your film and you study our film, and then we'll play. And tennis is a million miles away from that. But
did I ever tell you this Vince Lombardi thing? This Vince Lombardi story I always tell my students.
Go for it. We love Lombardi.
Okay. The Super Bowl, it's the Lombardi trophy, and so Lee Iacocca, who he worked his way up to the eye level with Henry Ford III, and Henry Ford III fired him, and then he took over Chrysler, and they were down and out, and he brought him back. He was in the auto industry, and he was at a dinner with Lombardi, and he says, "What was your secret to success?" And he said, "Fundamentals." He said, "My team had better fundamentals than the other team." And then he said something about, you got to have 11 guys above each other, whatever. But it was just fundamentals. And they had that play, that Packer sweep or Green Bay sweep or whatever they called it. And, they needed 3 yards. They knew it was coming. The defense knew it was coming. The spectators, everybody knew it was coming, but they couldn't stop it. And in the meantime, I've heard he goes to places, does 3-hour seminars on that one play, the execution of that one play, he'll do it, or he did do it. He's dead now, but it's just amazing.
There's a symbol, Raquel Welch, she passed away recently, and Jimmy Connors was on the Johnny Carson show, and Johnny Carson said, "I've been told that one negative of your game is you don't have any disguise." And Jimmy said, they probably prepped him. Jimmy said, "Well, if Raquel Welch is wearing a burlap bag, you still know what she has." And with Lee Iacocca, the people listening, when we used to train tennis teachers, we used to study this, that, and the other thing. We had a course where you had to read 8 books, and 4 of them I assigned. And so I was very fortunate, but these oral reports and written reports, and Lee Iacocca, when he took over Chrysler, he wanted to have a convertible. And so he has the 3 departments, the architects, the engineers, the physicists, and they come in and they say, "Well, it'll take us 8 months." And one department says, "No, it's going to take us 12." Another department says, "No, we need more than 12." And Lee Iacocca, hits his fist on the table, goes, "Find a motorhead, find somebody who loves cars, find someone who loves cars and knows a welder, and I want a convertible by Friday." And they found someone that produced a convertible by Friday. I just wanted them to drive it down the street, and if people look at it, we're going to make a convertible. And it's all the same. Lombardi.
He was the father of the Mustang. He was the one who produced the Mustang, and that was like that just shook people's heads. People were, getting into accidents watching it. When that first came out.
With yeah, so but Vic, for example, he wasn't the sergeant, but yet, that's where you need to have a staff. It's it's like Bear Bryant, called all his coaches in and one time said, "Hey, I'm tired of being the grizzly bear. You assistants you're now gonna be the grizzly bear. I'm gonna be the teddy bear." And but it takes a team of coaches but Vic, he had his rules too. When he coached juniors, he would just, hey, you're out, leave, come back tomorrow. But he wouldn't get into any of the yelling.
Gum chewing was a no.
Yeah.
But
hey, let's just talk a little bit about tennis in Europe. I know. There's so many things you could talk about with. I remember you running a Moonlight League. There's just so many different things that could help people out in tennis. I was just going to ask about tennis in Europe. Go ahead.
Well, what I think over the years, what has helped the Europeans is, or the Germans, is the two surface advantage. They, play indoors in the winter and they play outdoors in the summer. They have a very slow surface to play on in the summer on the clay, and then the fast track indoors, and it's given them a all around development. But it just gets stuck up in politics too. The DTB. They make very poor decisions in many cases, and it gets very political in many cases, and they don't support the right people, and they don't have a systemized. If you get the GreatBase into a federation like that, the same thing you got in the U.S., they'd be a lot further ahead. But then you have the problem of the limited court time. I've been teaching here forever, and I'm just trying to accept the fact that you're just a recreational player, teacher, and help a lot of people enjoy the game, and produce really good players is tough. But it's like anywhere, they have this club system over here, and if you get somebody who's doing well, a young, expiring junior, and so the first thing to do, the big clubs are going to come and say, "Well, come to us," because we play a higher league, and a lot of them fall for it. They go there, and then the development stops. Maybe they'll get a little better for a year because they got better competition, but things will break down and they don't go back to basics. But this club system has its advantages. It's really great being part of a team, playing in clubs, and playing other clubs, and you sit down and have dinner with them after the match, and and if you win your division, then the next year you go up a league, or you can go down a league, and it's well organized. But most of these bigger clubs, like you say in pro tennis, the higher you go, usually the lower the level of coaching it becomes. And that's the way it is here. The bigger the club, the worse the coaching is usually. But
has it changed? You've been there 42 years. Has it changed? And I think as an American, you think, well, people are loyal and they always play for their club. Do people jump around? I know that people jump around with teams, but do they jump around, bop?
Yeah,
we say bop and shop. Do they go from one coach to the next?
Yeah, they'll go. They'll change clubs. Like a big club over here, FCC, Charlottenburg Sporting Club, is. Recently, two of the top coaches left, and they took, a big part of the juniors with them over to Blau-Weiß, blue-white, So, they move around. There's, coaches will go from club to club, and players will go from club to club. But basically, when you're younger, they stay with the same club for a long time,
I think
they show a loyalty, and then, when they get to a higher level, sometimes there's a little bidding for players, come to us because we play a higher league, and the kids will fall for it. They'll say, "Okay, we'll go for you. We'll go over there. I can be on this team that plays higher."
And we had Dave Fish, the longtime Harvard coach, on as a guest, and another brilliant guy, brilliant mind. And he was the guy. It was Dave Howell that put the UTR together based off the French system, but Dave Fish was the guy who really promoted it. And, my understanding initially, it was for tennis to be competition, to be less expensive, less travel, get more people playing. people that live in their backyard, live in their community. And, but the UTR has some positives. I mean, I think the Wild Wild West, the entry fees are too high and they're not promoting doubles enough and shortening the scoring system. But what I'm getting at is in Europe, someone who's a really good college tennis player. Obviously, we have a lot of foreign players here, but someone's a really good American. They play really high level college tennis. What's sad is a lot of them, if they don't pursue pro tennis, they just start banging golf balls. Now they're banging pickleballs.
Oh my God!
And so that's where I think in Europe, why don't you expand upon that? Is that the people can stay with the game longer? They can play for a club, and there's social aspects to it, and there's some monies involved, and they can help out the junior program, and do that as a part-time contributor.
That's what I see with my son is that when he's done with his college career and he comes back, I'm sure he'll play for his club. Okay, and meet with the boys twice a week and practice, and then play a match in the weekend and have a couple beers afterwards. That's the nice thing about a part. And a lot of ladies, they stay with their club for a long time because the club tennis is just as active in the 50s, the 60s, the 35s or whatever, and same system. We're going to go up, we're going to go down. Come to us. We can go up next year if you play with us, But I mean, usually the older players don't change clubs at all. They stay with the club. There's a club here, Blue White. It's in Berlin. It's just, it's so elegant. I mean, you go in there and you have the china from them. And if you walk out on the patio, there's all these elderly women playing cards and whatever. And that's such a rich area of this. When these ladies die, then they'll leave half of their inheritance to the tennis club because that's where they spend their senior years. It's such a social middle point of everything.
I just always remember I've spent so much time over there, but there's a club match. Now, I've never been to Germany in the wintertime. I've been there for a bunch of summers, but with probably 20 plus, and with people come out and watch the matches. It's social. You have an audience, and that doesn't take place in the U.S. of A.
Like the girlfriends will come, and maybe his substitute players will come, and the parents of the players will come, and in the winter, not all of them, but all the clubs that have too many teams signed up, or they don't have an indoor facility of their own. Like some of these clubs with indoor facilities, then they'll, just rent the courts out to the members, but they all play at our center, And so I see it from the top to the bottom here every Saturday and Sunday. After 2:00 on Saturday and not at all on Sunday in the winter season, there's no courts for me to teach on because it's just rented out to the Tennis Federation. I mean, it's a great contract for the center. I mean, the courts are rented out from 9 in the morning till 10 at night. Okay. And, the indoor season's very active. Usually, the smaller clubs don't participate in the winter a lot because it costs a lot for court fees and you got to sign the teams up. Those are also additional costs of the little smaller clubs. But in the winter season, it's really year round, I mean, they have the summer season where you're going to have probably 5-6 matches. In the winter team, you're going to have 5-6 matches. That's 12 weekends. And then you have your holidays and whatever. So it's, there's matches all year long, team matches. Okay? And,
but they do.
But you're right. I mean, what's
that? You said I'm right. I guess I'll let you continue. What was I right about? People
about
say this often. I'm just kidding.
No, but you're right about the social aspect. A lot of people come and watch the matches, and the bigger clubs will bring their entourage with them, and our facility is good. They have that big window in the restaurant. We have some bleachers on court one, and so there's opportunity to watch. So
your work, like my work, is you've been a developmental coach. So in other words, there's no recruiting involved. How common is it for the federation to come and wine and dine, cherry pick, and take. So say a 12-year-old becomes a pretty good player in the USTA in this country, or
Well, playing the club tennis isn't going to do it alone. You got to get out and you got to play the tournaments. You got to play the tournaments to get in the rank, do better in the rankings and whatever, and then.
No, I'm talking about interference.
Invited.
I'm talking about interference where the federation comes and say, okay, you've taken the kid from point A to point B, but now we're going to take over and take him to point C.
Yeah, they don't like take them over. And they let them play basically at their clubs. And if there is a match between two countries or Bayern against Niedersachsen or whatever, then they'll just pull them together and play. It's not like there is one pretty big training center here in the north of Germany in Hanover, where they actually go there, sleep, go to school, train. But
I was there one time with Gunter Bosch, the Romanian who coached Becker. Remember what's the name of that?
Yeah, I know.
Barzinghausen's right next to it, right?
Barzinghausen.
Where Braden had his headquarters, and the Wittenbergs worked.
Well, the head, Kim Wittenberg. I got a guy in our hall. He learned to play tennis from Kim Wittenberg. Okay, Barzinghausen is where he was, but that's not too far from Hanover. That's all in Niedersachsen,
Yeah, so many names. Kim was a guest. We have to get his brother, the young one, Scott, on. He was I think the developmental side. I tell people, maybe I've taught 10 people over my 50 years that could stuff a basketball, but you don't teach in developmental tennis. To
answer your question, the federation pretty much leaves them alone, and lets the clubs develop them. And if they're good and they're doing well in the tournaments, and they'll pick them out to play the events that they need them for, basically.
I remember at one time, the federation, I know Germany's a wealthy country. The federation was giving families money. Do you remember that, or do you have any thoughts based on that comment?
Well, I know Henry Squire got money from the federation. It wasn't a great sum. I think they paid him 20,000 euros a year. I don't know what he's getting now, but that was like 2 years ago. They were supplementing him, But he plays for Germany and not for Australia.
Yeah, no, I remember that he was offered quite a bit of money. His father's Australian, and hopefully, a great kid, 6'4", 6'5", big serve. I know Andy Fitzell worked with them, and he's got to just hang in there. I just think that perseverance. I guess I could ask you this. You've helped me out with so many players. We need to get you on the podcast again with Austin Krajicek. I remember, he came, and his friend from Mississippi who won the NCAAs. Drawing a blank. Big serve. He won the NCAAs, but they ended up being at your place. So I expect maybe just Austin was there longer, but there was some.
No, they were both here for a week, and you sent them over because they were coming over to play Junior Wimbledon.
I thought there was a time where they were there. I get it mixed up because Austin. I do kind of stop in my tracks. It's kind of like when Harry Hopman would call me up. Just like, this is Mr. Hopman calling me up. And it was, to have, during the Christmas time, we had interns go there, and in the summer. But I have to say that being ranked number one, this kind of just stops you in your tracks. Like he's, I think he's still there. He's been ranked one. It's one thing to have a student who's been ranked in the top 10, but he's ranked one. But I thought he was there longer.
Well, didn't he just win the French Open?
He won the French, but they were with his partner. They named number one, but maybe it was somebody else. But I thought it was your place. I knew he was there, but I thought there was some place where there were some complications, and he ended up being someplace almost a month. And I was just going to ask about, do you say some things about his work ethic, because he would go places, and I used to have some fun when he was playing these future tournaments when he was, in the summer when he was a teenager, and could I help with housing? And there was quite a few times where he stayed with, teaching pros that I knew that were in that area, some people that I had trained. So, but no, I thought he'd stay there longer. You would have some comments on his work
maybe
ethic.
Maybe it was a little more. Oh yeah, I loaned him a pair of indoor shoes, and he burned them out in a week. But he was good. He went. That was the first time he went to Wimbledon, the junior Wimbledon, and he trained there for a week or 8 days, or I don't know. But he won the Australian Open, and I said to Heike, I said, the winner of the French Open was a guest at our house. She goes, oh, really?
With,
and it was Austin. Yeah.
With David Squire, great guy. That might be the funniest story that's been said on our podcast. Although that's a locker room story, but anyway, I called Squire up, and he beautiful club in Dusseldorf, and has some pros working for him. And hey, Squire, how would you like to go to the French Open with a kid that I've worked with for a number of years? And Squire went, but then one of the complications was, so he was a scholarship player at Bollettieri's, but the parents had to fund. Hats off to parents who take their kid down the road in tennis, especially to that level. Money, sacrifice. But what happened in the end is, so Squire went, and when there's a Bollettieri, so Austin's on a scholarship, but when he would travel to tournaments many times, he's on his own. The parents are funding it, and there's no Bollettieri coach. So Squire, he went to the French Open, but then there was a Bollettieri coach, so it ended up being a little bit awkward. But
I remember David telling me that. Yeah.
But that's one thing about our the one thing about our network is, we, not to, get into a commercial sponsorship, but that's where we had a meeting on that today. It's coming towards the end of the year, and we need to have a roster and raise some money and do a better job, and we need to unite the network, and that just would help. Where we started it would help the coaches in the trenches. I don't like credibility. The word credibility means you're believable, doesn't mean you're truthful. I say that over and over again, but there is so much credibility behind the network, and what some of the stories, and granted, someone to be number one in the world, Carl Hale, who I know quite well, he's a director of Tennis Canada, or not Tennis Canada, the Canadian Open, the pro tournament. And he says, well, you need to do is work with a marquee player. Then that's where it comes down to recruiting. I mean, there's people that would change their last name to work with a marquee player. Raven Clausen, he said on our podcast, well, people work early childhood development, the fruit of your labor, you're not going to see that for 10 years. And, people don't want to wait 10 years. They want to get some recognition. And so that happens, that merchant of flesh, and all the way down to local tournaments where people are out there handing out their business cards, and, they're looking for people who can already play. And, we call that the third base coach, the merchant of flesh. That we need to have more first base coaches.
Rick Macy.
No, well, with Rick Macy, take the high road on that. That's where the line comes from. Go ahead.
Yeah. He said, Steve, you send him a third and I'll bring him home, or something like that.
Yeah. But he handled it really well. If you read his book, he says, flip it. And very quickly, people heard the story before, but there's a player that had been in his academy, but that certainly was a crazy time for him, not to defend him, but and it wasn't like it was a long, long period of time, but there was, 18 months, 24 months, whatever it was, where Williams sisters were there. And, I put myself right on the court because he wanted to merge with this academy. I was running five minutes away. And, so he didn't know this one kid that we came in, and Seth Rose, he became an All-American. He's at the University of South Carolina. He's in the Hall of Fame. So that means if you're in the Hall of Fame at a school to pack one of those Power 5 conferences, you're a good tennis player. And Rick didn't know who he was, and he was in his program, but that's where Rick, he's a little bit embarrassed by that, but that was a long time ago. And that's where he said, well, you bring him to third and I'll bring him home. But I think that's what people have to understand is, like a Bollettieri, I have great respect for Bollettieri, the late Nick Bollettieri, like he could get people to really believe in themselves. I think like Roger Federer said, you have the right coach at the right time. I mean, Philip Farmer, he's done wonders with Austin Krajicek. And, would he have been the best person for Austin Krajicek when he was 7, 8, 9 years old? I don't think that his background, when you think about, okay, he's working with the Bryan brothers, he's doing this, he's doing that. But No, but we come back. We do need more first base coaches, and I think also too to just have you talk a little bit about Dennis Van der Meer and Vic Braden.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Andy Fitzell says it all the time. Just let's watch your players hit the ball. And, just all it takes is one hit. Let me see their forehand.
Yeah.
Let me see their backhand. We had a student visit. I mentioned him, who you know from Dusseldorf, Rami Baby, and he's working in the city and he plays tennis once a week, and he hits the ball better than probably anybody who's been here the last 3.5 months from a technical standpoint. It's just clean. And programming the brain, fundamentals. That doesn't mean he's going to go out and beat people 2-2, 2-1. But Mark, it's been great to have you. Mark Hamlin, Casanova, New York. What do we tell your students? You're a bad goalie.
Yeah, that's I see people all the time. They come after visiting you, and I get that one line: "You're a bad goalie." I was just talking to Cheryl's husband, Bill. I'll just say one more thing. And I was telling this story when I played at North Country. We went up to Plattsburgh State, and they had homecoming. They come out with like 24 players or 22 players, and they're driving. We went up with 8 guys, plus goalie, and we won 4-3. And he told me they went to the Final Four in Denver when he was at RPI playing for Ned Harkness. They went to the Final Four in Denver and had 13 guys.
Wow.
Okay. But anyways.
Okay. Yeah, so let me just say on the goalie is that Mark, the red light went on so many times he had a sunburn. His neck was always sunburned. He was a sieve. That's how you drain the spaghetti. It's going to get through. Couldn't stop a beach ball. With another hockey line, my brother Matt, the donut line meant he had no center. People don't know hockey. There's 3 people on the forward line, so certainly this was a stolen line, I'm sure. But so Matt was a center, and he was being told, said, "Yeah, it's a donut line. We have no center." And Matt said, "No, it's a helicopter line. We have no wings." So, but anyway. After you were here, I gave Seth Barnum a call too. So
I gotta get your number from him, and I'll talk to you. I'll call you again about my son a little bit, and let you know what's up there.
Yeah. Anyway, listeners, some golden nuggets. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, listeners.
Say hi to your listeners, and it's great being part of the GreatBase. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Mark. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, another podcast in the books. Thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of it. I did. It's always great to go back and reminisce with an old friend, but also, talk about 2 masters. Dennis Van der Meer, Vic Braden, 2 pillars of the GreatBase. All right, thanks again, everybody. Adios. Thanks, Mark.